We've got a stacked week of games, but if you can only tune in for one day, make sure it is Saturday. We have got the Jade Dragons taking on the Camelot Kings in a top-of-the-table matchup. Can the Jade Dragons stop whatever's going on? They're the downfall of the Phase 1 champions. Can the Camelot Kings continue their rise here in Phase 2? All that and more this Saturday on the SPL.
SMITE fans, and welcome back to the SMITE Pro League powered by Alienware. And while we've got Alienware for all your player gear necessities and desires that you could possibly be after, what good is a solid setup without being at the utmost comfort inside of that setup? Make sure that you head on over to needforseat.com and make sure to use code SMITEMAX to get a nice little tribute to your gaming setup, because the Maxnomic chairs are definitely the play if you're looking for the ultimate in gamer comfort. And again, we saw someone that I think was kind of the pinnacle of the Maxnomic setup and display here at the studios. Gore Miser going to be joining me here for set number 2 of the Camelot Kings versus the Jade Dragons. And Gore, you really did put in the work on that Maxnomic video.
Yeah, so when we're attaching it, I did my 2 bolts on the side, like for the backrest. First off, most important bolts that you have to get on there. And then I did Aggro's 2 because he was struggling getting one, so I did both of those. And that's why we always meme Aggro for like the amount of work he was capable of doing, is just because I did have to step in and do the other part. And then Mifflin like flapped the things on there, and then Hindu told me I had to go do something, and I got pulled out. Well, I could have done more work, Taco. I had more in me.
Well, Gore, that's actually awesome to hear, because we might have a whole lot to cover here today with this second set. As you guys are already aware, the Olympus Bolts up against the Atlantis Leviathans happened prior to this upcoming set of the Jade Dragons versus the Camelot Kings. Of course, the Bolts walked away with a 2-1 victory, although things looking pretty close. Atlantis Leviathans certainly did not make it easy for the Bolts, but the Bolts still standing top of the leaderboards here for the split 2 so far. And Gore, this could be a prime opportunity today for the Camelot Kings if they manage to notch another set win here, because it is going to put them, or maintain them, I should say, in that second place position.
It is absolutely insane to me how close 3, 4, 5 are. Honestly, even 2 in that mix. I mean, everybody feels like they're jumbled up right here, and I think that puts more weight on this, right? The Bolts have kind of taken away. I think next week they play the Valkyries. That will complete their like rotation of every team, at least for the first time here in Phase 2, and then they'll start again at the Warriors. And so they've done their almost perfect run, at least for the first half. But everybody else has been just topsy-turvy back and forth between the two, and I'd say more weight on this matchup for the Dragons, because they have been slowly falling towards the bottom.
Well, it's certainly not 5th place for the Jade Dragons that I think they had on their mind for split number 2 here, Gore, but they have certainly been a little bit slower to the start. Granted, we are still only in week 4, plenty of time left, I think, for this Jade Dragons roster to try and bounce back, but also I think it's important to note that the Jade Dragons, I think, recently have definitely been on the up and up.
Yeah, I think that's the important part, right? Like, a lot of those losses, admittedly against some of the top teams that we're seeing now, like your Leviathans, your Bolts that are causing them trouble, and they've been able to get those bounce-back wins when necessary, and now starting to turn things around a little bit more towards this point. And like you said, this is week 4. This is the halfway point, right? Like, I mean, after this set, for the most part, you either have one more and then you're pivoting into the last half, or this is your last half. And so for them, I think being able to turn things around and just get their feet under them starting this week and carrying on through the rest of the phase means they could still make an easy climb up to the top 2.
Well, a solid bright spot here for the Jade Dragons in a lot of their recent set successes has come down to Sam for Soccer in this jungle role specifically, Gore. It seems as though Sam has really been able to run the map quite effectively here for the Jade Dragons, and he could pose a lot of issues up against the Camelot Kings today.
And he has been, I mean, just the target of so many bans lately. I mean, the Mercury feels like a must ban, Fenrir feels like a must ban, and the Fenrir isn't always him, but it's still something that he pilots well. And I do actually like this, something that we've seen a lot of these junglers doing, but pivoting into like the Erlong Shin as well. I think there's just a lot of openings for the Dragons when it comes to picks and bans, and Sam really helps flourish that. His play excels and is perfect for setting up the rest of the team. And because they're just so wide variety, I mean, so many bans go his way, they get Tiamat for Heroine so often. Like, it just makes things feel maybe a little bit easier for him.
I think it says a lot, though, for a team when one player individually is forcing a lot of uncomfortable picks to actually be allowed through. And we've actually got Sam for Soccer standing by for the pregame interview. Sam, Gore and I were just talking about it on the desk, but you really have been such a heavy focus in a lot of these sets that you have played so far. What's that been like for you from the jungle role?
It's nothing that different, I guess. I mean, it can always kind of happen. A lot of times, like, there's a certain player on teams they focus, but I mean, I think they tend to target ban like other people too. Like Tyler gets banned a good amount, same with Mike, and maybe everybody from time to time. So it just kind of tends to happen with our team.
And what are some of the main things that you guys are kind of looking out for up against the Camelot Kings here today? Because as we saw from the standings alone, Camelot Kings have definitely been holding their own against a lot of the teams in the league so far. Do you expect them to pose some issues here for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely just one of the top teams. You know, they were less split. Luckily, they didn't make the playoffs, but I mean, they're top of the leaderboards right now. I think it'll always be a pretty good matchup against them, but I think we're pretty confident heading in.
And have you been having a lot of fun with a lot of the mid-season changes and starting to get a little bit more of a grip in terms of the meta for jungle specifically?
Yeah, I think so. It's definitely been fun. Nice change of pace, like having boots out of the meta is the pretty big thing, and changing all your power spikes. I've been enjoying it a good amount for sure, and I think we're just getting like more used to it and kind of, I guess, yeah, just ramping up a little.
Yeah, I mean, it's always important for a team to find their flow, and I think that you guys are certainly one that is always a fun matchup whenever you guys are playing, so definitely looking forward to seeing what you guys have in store for us here today up against the Camelot Kings, and thanks so much for joining us on the pregame interview.
Yeah, thanks.
Sam, though, seems as though he's really got a good grip on things, Gore, at least in terms of understanding that when you're going up against a lot of these teams, it's very... I shouldn't say it's just not very exclusive in terms of just teams looking for a single player to kind of isolate when it comes to the drafts.
Yeah, it's a lot more difficult. I think it's showcased in a lot of these drafts lately, but the Dragons more so than anybody, just because if you're banning Mercury, like literally nobody else is banning Mercury. It's not against any team that's not the Dragons. It's not a ban. Fenrir fluctuates in and out depending on who you're playing. I think the Kings have a lot of that as well on their side. It's just one of those interesting marks where everybody right now it feels like has a wide enough god pool that even with the best bans in the league, even if you have the best target bans, sometimes you still end up walking away worse for wear because it's like, man, we tried to get X, Y, and Z. We got all three of them, and then they still played W, T, U, and V, whatever. Like, they locked in everything they needed to feel solid, and I think the Dragons are a team that does that well.
Yeah, the Dragons being able to recognize the fact that it's more often than not Sam or Mike or Hurry kind of taking the brunt of a lot of that God focus throughout the picks and bans phase, Gore. But I think it also showcases a lot in terms of individual flexibility because Sam, for sure, has definitely been expanding what he's been showcasing to us in these sets, and the fact that he's been having to stretch himself so far and still managing to make it work, that kind of just leads me to believe that Captain Twig here for the Kings up against Sam in the jungle might not be as clear-cut as what we've been seeing from Twig in the past, because he has definitely been running it in sets as of late.
Yeah, I think that's actually maybe my favorite thing about it is watching this transition from Twig kind of being the punching bag of this team to being like a much more heavy pivotal setup machine for them. And granted, it's always a little back and forth. I mean, you got to look at the KDA difference between these two. It was like a 2.95 there for Sam, showcases that he is active on all of those kills. 1.7 But it's weird, like when you look at KDA, it's factoring the kills in a lot heavier than the assists. That number definitely showcased that Sam's a killer, not necessarily a setup machine. You look at kill participation, it's a 79% for Sam to 70% for Twig. Like, he's in these fights, he's really doing the setup as much as he possibly can. And I think that's the glory of the Kings, is it's a different style, and it really plays to their strengths. I'm really enjoyed watching this team this year, and this is one of those matchups, at least in Phase 1, that it was really exciting. We got to see it, I think twice there. It was a 2-0 for the Dragons and a 2-1 for the Dragons. And if the Kings can keep it on that rate, technically this one should be a 2-1 for them, and the next time should be a 2-0 for them to get the perfect symmetrical circle even.
Well, people do tend to claim third time's the charm, but knowing the Dragons, Gore, they're never ones to try and make anything easy, especially since it seems as though the Dragons, I think, are definitely looking to try and work their way up in the standings. But we don't have to guess any longer. We've actually got picks and bans for game number 1 coming in hot, as we'll have the Camelot Kings actually in that first pick position. And Gord, we were just highlighting some of those differences between the way that these two teams try to prioritize their team fight engagement, with Twig being a little bit more utility-based, Sam, I think, being a little bit more individual performance-based in terms of looking for his own sort of kills. And is there an overlap, you would think, between these two junglers in terms of what they prefer to play?
I think some of them are going to overlap. Like the Fenrir, I think, was an easy highlight, although it's something that I think Mike locks in maybe more than we see Sam lock it in, but still a big pick there for the Dragons. But a lot of the more recent picks specifically coming in from the Dragons don't necessarily scream something the Kings are going to go for. I'm actually also interested to see whether or not Twig will go back. The Naja was such a big setup machine for them in Phase 1. Hasn't really been going towards that one a lot this time around. Has a very, very diverse god pools, like the Daji, the Raven. He's been jumping all around the place. But I do think that Erlong is going to be contested.
Erlong could potentially be a strong contestation point here. Kings as well. Twig has definitely been showing a lot of priority towards the Osiris, and if I had to gauge any sort of similarities between this set and the last one we just saw, Osiris was definitely a top pick priority for these teams, but of course Jade Dragon's actually choosing to ban it to make sure that Twig does not get his staple comfort pick that he's been running around with in Split 2 so far. But interesting ban so far for the Camelot Kings. They're taking away the Artemis, they're taking out the Emojis, the Fenrirs. Gord, does it seem as though there's an emphasis here already in terms of the Kings trying to make sure that they get a solid utility team fight initiation comp?
Yeah, and I mean, based on what we saw against the Leviathans, like they love playing the Artemis. I think this recognizes that they're not looking to lock them in first, but they're also forcing these awkward bans from the Dragons. Like, okay, do you want to give us Gilgamesh? Do you want to give us Fafnir? Do you want to give us Tiamat? Like, we're first pick. We get to swing whatever we want our way, so you have to make these awkward choices for yourselves. They're going to be able to, like, Fafnir, Fenrir, Giannis was one of their top threes. Like, they've been focusing on the Odin. They've had a lot of interesting top threes, and that's just this week that they've really been able to open up, and I think it makes the Dragons' job a little more difficult.
Someone else that's definitely due for discussion here, though, on the Kings is Genetics. He has certainly been making a name for himself from that support role. Not only that, but he introduces a really cool dynamic to the Kings, because there is just so much, I think, interchangeable flexibility between Genetics and Variety, given that they've been doing a lot of this double Guardian composition, kind of frontline heavy play style, so as to let big man teams and the carries in general just sort of flourish. And for the Jade Dragons, Gore, do you feel as though Morgan Le Fay and Terra are good picks at kind of deterring that sort of play style?
Now, Morgan Le Fay, like, locked in this early, I'm a little worried about it, because, like, that first off, the most successful dive we saw, Leviathans versus Morgan Le Fay, the only game she's actually lost this week was when they grabbed a Fafnir. They also had Gilgamesh, they also had Hachiman and Kukulkan. They had a lot of dive on that one. But Fafnir's the start of that, right? I think it opens up the Dragons to a lot of counter picks, and for the Kings to potentially use what was used against them to be able to capitalize on that. But at the same time, she skyrocketed up to an 80% win rate all of a sudden in the last, like, what, 2 sets. So things are looking a little more comfortable for the Dragons. I think I want a little more peel out there for the Morgan, and then everything will be fine.
Certainly a lot of setup so far, though, just between that Morgan Le Fay and Terra. Peel, maybe not so much, but certainly guys that are able to get pretty heavily up in the mix. Giannis and Honor as the response, though, mostly want to kind of pinpoint this Giannis here, Gore, because that's a lot of mobility being introduced that can kind of be fairly effective when trying to disengage from a Terra and Morgan Le Fay.
And it's weird. I feel like since Hurry lost the one game on Giannis, like, he had a 100% win streak on Giannis for the year. He lost one game, and we haven't haven't seen him go back to it just yet. I don't know if that's necessarily a thing that he's doing consciously as much as it is the team, but to pick up the Terra over their mid lane, or I guess alongside their mid laner, to go for the Morgan Le Fay over the Giannis, I think is speaking wonders of where their mind is at for the Dragons. And it feels like, one, he's going to get a lot of damage on. We just saw what Shinto and what Venenu can do on this pick. Hurry's going to be able to give us another master class on it. But I'm still kind of worried. I mean, Giannis is able to get back there pretty easily. He does a lot of damage on her as well. Like, you're going to need your beads, you're going to need your Aegis, and you're going to need your team.
And for what it's worth, Big Man Tings, I think, has also had some pretty strong showings on the Giannis and just about every single mid lane god that he's opted for in Split 2 so far, in Season 8 in general, really. But one thing I do have to point out, Gore, is the fact that Hurry, being such a well-versed player in the ways of Giannis, do you feel as though that gives him a little bit of or the Jade Dragons as a whole, a little bit of insight and advantages, because Hurry knows exactly what he doesn't want to play into as Giannis?
And theoretically, it should also, not just that, open up the conversation for the team, right? Like, we know when we're trying to set up for a Gold Fury where this Giannis wants to position to get, like, this angle on the altar or something like that. You should know, theoretically, better positioning. Where should we stand? How are we going to tackle this? How can we maybe bait him to take a bad decision and block the portals? And that's, I think, the big key. Terra? Really, really good at blocking portals away from people. Erlang Shin, he's good at pulling you away from it with the taunt. If they continue this route, I mean, Ymir's still available. That's a big pickup for PBM, and we just saw what Jake can do with that. There's a lot to really control this Giannis and keep him locked away.
Erlang can also be a little bit of a nuisance. Same thing for the Terra. When dealing with the likes of a Fafnir, it can be difficult to have a successful Draconic transformation in that Fafnir and really get the full benefits out of that coerce on the team if he's under all the pressure himself, because you need that Fafnir to be alive to kind of facilitate what's going on in those teamfight engagements, Gore. And the Erlang, like you mentioned, being a rather contested pick here in this set, but with the Jade Dragons having opted for it in that early 3 pick selection point, do you think that that's kind of putting a damper on the Kings composition overall so far here, or where do you think the direction is for Twig now? I
mean, it's definitely going to shift where Twig goes, and looking, again, he played Raven earlier, that's banned away from him, so that's going to take a little bit of a hit, and his Finrear as well has been taken away from him, but he likes to jump to setup. Again, I've kind of been missing his Najah. Someone asked about Najah the other day on Twitter, and all I've been thinking about was Twig's Najah since then, so maybe that's just on me for some recency bias in terms of when I looked it up. But he's been a lot more over the place, but it does feel, like you said, a little bit of a dampener, to the point where I might even say that this is his Kabrak, and I guess it depends on what goes alongside it. We've seen him go into the jungle sometimes. Cherio's not the coach for the Kings. At this point, I guess he's not the coach for anybody in the SPL anymore, but that's something that we used to see him run, so Twig's had a lot of experience against that, and it could be an interesting pickup for them. Not sure if I'd give it an advantage, but it definitely would throw a wrench in at things.
I think with the recent buffs to Vampiric Shroud, there's probably a little bit more of a discussion in terms of the Kabrakan probably being more intended for variety here in solo. Also, it just adds on to that double frontline opportunity here for the Camelot Kings. But the other concern that I have, Gore, is do you feel like this is enough follow-up for a Kabrakan and Fafnir with the Achilles on her and Giannis? Because whether or not that Achilles Kabrakan is jungle solo or vice versa, I definitely don't see Giannis as that end-all, be-all, yes, this is the follow-up burst that I'm looking for, unless you get a really sick through space and time.
Yeah, it kind of feels a little disjointed, like maybe putting too much pressure. Like, Giannis, theoretically, maybe he doesn't need all of that burst damage, because Achilles as well as Kabrakan can do a little bit of their own to start things off, but at the same time, it just doesn't feel like you said, the follow-up that you necessarily want. It's not bad follow-up, but the other side's got Morgan Le Fay and Izanami. Like, even though Izanami's only been seen, I think, twice and only played by the Titans so far, there's a lot more consistent follow-up and a lot more consistent setup, I think, from the Dragons. The Kings are going to maybe be competing with each other for it, but that being said, stuns from Fafnir, stuns from Kabrakan, walls from Kabrakan, as well as, I guess, stuns and executes coming from Achilles. They've got a lot of tools to work with. It's just making them work together that's going to be the hard part.
And it definitely seems as though the Jade Dragons had very smart responses, because the Kings making it evident that they want side lane pressure from the get-go so as to give this Giannis a little bit of space to operate. So if Big Man Tings is mindful, then we could be seeing some power play opportunities for the Camelot Kings here off that through space and time, but might be difficult when dealing with the likes of Izanami, Terra, Kakulin, even the Erlang Shen in the jungle screams early to mid-game pressure here for the Dragons. Dragons.
I gotta go back and factor the big man Tings part of this back into the honest discussion, because it's one of those things. He's gonna be just fine in his lane, and safe at that, right? On her plus Fafnir, just individually in that lane, is going to have a lot of power to it, which I think is devastating on its own. Then you've got Cabrakan, maybe against Cucullin, Achilles even against Cucullin. Maybe not a lot of blood being spilled over there, but the rotations that can come out from the Kings really start to make me think that as long as Tings is on top of things, which he usually is, it could really escalate into some new heights for the Kings here. But at the same time, there's a lot of room for error at the same. It's a very, very difficult scale to balance for them.
Certainly some strong win conditions for
Yes.
both of these teams reigning through, but we've got the matchup right now of the Camelot Kings versus the Jade Dragons for game number 1. It's going to be Aggro and Mifflin on the call.
Thank you, Taco and Gore. That's right, it's Aggro and Miff, and Doug, of course, bringing you game 1 between the Camelot Kings and the Jade Dragons. And Miff, if you wouldn't have known about all these roster changes for the Leviathans, about how red hot the Bolts have been, this would be the game of the week in the vast majority of weeks. But we're coming off an incredible set. I think this set has a chance to really match it. These two teams really up there in terms of their potential.
Completely agree. Camelot Kings is reflected in their standings, and I think most people would argue Jade Dragons aren't performing up to the standard that we would have expected of them, but already just looking at these team compositions, Aggro, I'm liking what I see. It is early game aggression from both sides. I'd almost expected to see this Cabrakan head into the jungle almost as a direct counter to Morgan Le Fay. I mean, what's she going to do to peel Cabrakan at any point this game? Just about nothing. She just prays that maybe BBM can do it for him, but instead, it is going to be Variety taking it.
Big man Tings in trouble, has to use the beat, but
no.
it's too little, too late. First blood for the Jade Dragons as Heroind and Sam forego the wave. Who needs minions? My farm is on that guy.
Hey, if Yanis is a great late game god, what's one way to stop it? Let's make sure he doesn't get to that point. Great body blocks from the Jade Dragons, and big man Tings, no beads, no chance. He's going to be the target of aggression for the next 2 minutes.
And you've got gods like Erlong Shen that can keep him from the wall pretty effectively, just like we saw Sam pull out right there. This Cabrakan pick, I did want to talk about it because I think it is so smart up against what the Jade Dragons have drafted, and that's why I'm so surprised that it wasn't in the jungle, because you want it against the gods like Erlong Shen, where you're root immune whenever you press your one on Cabrakan, and that's really good against Erlong with his ranged root, and really good against the Terra with her root that takes a long time to set up. You can very easily root immune that. I feel like I'd want this Cabrakan in as many fights as I possibly can because it counters so many of the gods the Dragons have.
And it doesn't seem like that's really weighing on Variety's mind, Aggro. He doesn't go for the blink in the first slot. Instead, it's a defensive relic with the bead selection, which means he's likely going to be just hanging out in this lane for a good little bit, at least until level 12, until he can get some more aggression under his belt.
Captain Twig in trouble, gets his recall stopped, but not ended up dying for it, as he's on this Achilles in the jungle. And Achilles had a stint as a jungler for a while, kind of fell off from that, now potentially back. Do you think that this is the beginning of a trend, or maybe just what the Dragons saw? Fine, okay, hello, you're not allowed to go there, buddy.
Hey, a little early in the game to be diving into tower. I think Achilles jungle can just straight up work. He's got good power spikes. It's a little bit easier to get that power under his belt now that you don't have to go towards the boots. It's good CC, great chase down potential as well, but it's more of a comfort pick, I'd say. Captain Twig has liked this pick in the past. It's not something that I think is going to define the meta, but certainly fits into it.
Fine, okay, taking that tower shot and being forced to recall, he's going to lose his blue buff for it, so it ends up being a fairly costly mistake. Though as far as losing blue buff goes, Cucullin the least impacted by it, as he of course does not use that mana. Feels like the Dragons continue to try and push that lead in the mid lane, as Heroind the first one to hit level 5, getting that assist on the first blood and setting big man Tings a little bit behind. We saw a red buff invade already from the Dragons. Wouldn't be too surprised if they try and keep that going.
Might as well keep that pressure up while you've got it. Sam for Soccer goes for that Mannequin Scepter in the first slot, so likely the strongest person on the map until we see level 6, level 7 start to tick its way through. And they've got great timers already established on the side of Jade Dragons. Expect Heroind to head back to base very shortly to get ready for this red buff invade. I'm excited to see how the Camelot Kings respond, because they've got some options. They can either group up and try to put up a full-on defense on this red, or continue going where it's been working out for them, which is this right-hand side of the map. If they can maintain this blue buff invade in response to the Jade Dragons pressure on the duo side, that's one answer.
Variety's already used that root immunity, so it's going to cost him his beads. Ultimate from Fine, ultimate from Sam, knock up from Sam, dead Variety. 2
on the board now for the Jade Dragons, and Sam's been instrumental in both.
Aggro, I don't think they're going to evade the blue buff, man.
No, I don't think so either,
Yeah,
no.
Variety's dead for a little bit. 5 seconds left on the grayscale screen. But that red buff, there's no grouping from the Jade Dragons as of yet. Sam for Soccer dedicates his time to that solo side of the map. Maybe a little bit more worried about Final K, trying to make sure he doesn't fall behind. Well, Fine's doing just okay. Doesn't need any more help. Already has a 1-level lead.
This is just 4 minutes into this set, Mifflin. You're not allowed to make another fine okay joke. The rest
whole
of the set.
The whole set?
Nope,
What if it goes 3?
I told you beforehand that you got 1, and if you wasted it, that's on you.
Okay.
It's either that or I'm going to drop so many Letterkenny references you won't be able to
Lord,
breathe.
I won't be able to keep my head straight, that's for sure. You better watch out on that one, bud. As the Jade Dragons off to a good 2-0 start, up about 1,500 gold. And it's really centered around this Erlong Shen so far. And we've seen Erlong struggle more so than succeed as of late in the jungle. But it feels like this is Sam leaning into that identity a little bit more than we've seen other Erlong jungles really do it. He's been active on the map earlier than I think we've seen most of them pull out.
Yeah, very often we see Erlong Shens go for a slower build as well. Mannequin Scepter immediately into the Stone Cutting Sword. Well, no, Sam for Soccer wants to get involved right now. The Crusher going to synergize very well with his abilities and also afford him a little bit more attack speed. So I do really like this stylistic change that Sam for Soccer has made. And, well, Erlang Shen being the god of feast or famine means that you want to hit the ground running.
Look,
he has.
There is no way a god with 3 different CCs, none of which DR each other, is bad.
I agree.
It can't be.
Well, what about when you're like, I don't know, 2 levels behind and you're essentially a 100% melee
Oh,
god?
he's real bad then. Yeah, he's real.
Once
He's
you're
real
behind,
bad
he's
then.
worthless.
Yes, once you're behind, he's worthless. But if you're ahead, you're going to be doing a lot. Genetics jumps in on this left-hand side looking for Panda Cat, but instead will settle for PVM as Netrioid with a great impale. Mike has nowhere to go. Netrioid got it, but Twig had it covered in case Mike was able to leave. Good kill there for the Camelot Kings as they are on the board 6 minutes in.
But that's a lot of resources used just to shut down one support. Ultimates expended by Twig, Genetics, and Netrioid. This is an opportunity now for the Jade Dragons to work their way in. And it's not just the ultimates that go down. Horrific Emblem used as well. Camelot Kings are going to be very weak in the 3v3, in the team fight. And with Gold Free spawned up already, that's not a great spot.
And that Horrific Emblem matters just as much, if not more, than a lot of these ultimates, because one of the things that can set these Erlong Shen players behind is this Horrific Emblem. That's a relic that he really struggles against because he just starts going 2 miles an hour in turtle form and he kind of loses all of the threat that he has. Speaking of losing threat, it seems like the Dragons might have lost theirs on this red buff invade as Twig is here on this right-hand side. Ultimate from Fine knocks both up, and he's okay, but Sam is not. He's down to a sliver of HP, but no ultimates left in the tank for the Kings to knock him down. As Fine OK does end up falling to the gank to Captain Twig on that right-hand side, but the Dragons may have escaped.
What?
Sam, not like this, my friend! Ends up getting his back canceled and stomped down by Netrioid just a fraction of a second before he went back to base.
Aggro, he must have been in the shop.
Must have
Netrioid
been.
casually walked up to him. I mean, he swung the auto, then engaged with the disperse. That was leisurely for the Camelot Kings. Jade Dragons, a little bit of a loss of focus there.
Yeah.
Off that invade attempt, cost Sam for Soccer his life and his lead in one fell swoop. And, well, we were already talking about what Erlang Shen from behind does, and it's not that much. So he's not out of it just yet. It's only about maybe half a level, or level and a half, rather, now as Captain Twig ticks over to 9. I take it back. This is starting to look grim.
Yeah, it's looking pretty bad. I don't know, man. It's not looking good for Sam, but he does hit over to level 8, so it is really close to about a level as Twig is getting his reset off. No jungle on his side of the map to farm either. So about a level differential between the two. But when you've got 2 warriors in the jungle, the one that has the lead is going to have a bigger than normal advantage as if it were 2 assassins.
I completely agree. It's just that ability to act as that frontliner and get a ton of damage off at the exact same time. And right now, it's Captain Twig benefiting from the entirety of that lead. But haven't had much of a chance to talk about these mid laners as Sam for Soccer takes a skirmish.
He really wants this Greater Scorpion, and he's going to expend the ult to do it. It's going to cost Twig his ult.
No chase.
And Sam's got Blink. Twig does not, but Sam might be blinking into the teeth of the dragon, and I guess he's on the dragon, but he doesn't have any teeth in this instance because there were 2 people coming in order to cover Twig's back, and he ends up walking away A-OK.
So you're allowed to make dragon jokes, but I can't crack a fine okay joke?
Correct, yes.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
And here's why.
Okay.
Fine OK's been in the league longer than the Jade Dragons have been a team.
And that
As
means
a-
that my joke is aged like a fine wine and still
No.
funny to this day, and your joke is new age and nobody laughed.
No, your joke is the horse that's been beaten to death.
No.
Yeah, it's dead.
No, but Final K loves it.
Mifflin.
It's like, have you not watched his stream? He's cracking them all the time.
Hey, that's great. Look, I'm not taking no offense to Alfonso, but like some of the jokes he's making aren't necessarily. The
No
top
offense
tier.
to Alfonso, but incredibly offensive statement real quick.
No offense, but he's not funny at all. Obviously a joke. We love some Final K around here. As he's really got to try and take up his lead, because the lead that he got from that early gank ends up getting killed off on that right-hand side. Now he ends up being a little bit behind Variety even in this lane, even in the Warrior Guardian matchup.
He is, but take a peek at his build. He knows he wants to rotate out, goes for the Talisman of Energy very early on, so that additional movement speed should help him get involved inside of these team fights. I'm really looking forward to this first Gold Fury skirmish, and it seems like it's the Jade Dragons looking forward to it as well. Sanford Soccer setting a trap here for Netrioid, but maybe just gets baited in. Genetics on the rotation in as well.
Blink in, silence is perfect from Panda Cat, but beads are there from Netrioid. It's still nearly cost him his whole health bar. Man, half a second earlier, Netrioid was full HP. Now, at a fraction of his health bar, and a beadsless going in forward. And Sam ends up making an impact despite still being down in XP.
And he has to keep up this pace. At this point, I don't think he closes up this XP gap. Instead, has to make the difference on the map, which is why he's putting so much emphasis on finding this pressure. If he finds that kill, if he sets up his team, that's a Gold Fury immediately. And now it's not about the Sanford Soccer carry project. Instead, he is a facilitator for his squad.
Still, Erlong can do that pretty well. Remember, days gone by, he has even been a support in his past, though not really recently. Apparently losing Root Cripple on your range will matter in that regard. I want to talk about this Morgan Le Fay here, Mifflin. I feel like it's kind of convenient that Morgan Le Fay comes into the meta right as the lifesteal build becomes popular, because I feel like it synergizes on her really well, especially with the ultimate.
Yeah, she just gets so much sustain inside of these fights. Her poke is incredibly strong. I mean, sometimes when you're playing against Morgan Le Fay, it feels like you're lined up against an Anubis. If you don't just straight up kill her, she's full HP off of any singular wave. I think it is interesting as well that the Jade Dragons take Morgan Le Fay so high up in their draft, because the Camelot Kings had plenty of time to look for counter engage, to look for anything to shut her down, and they've got a great composition for it. Variety on the Bracken, Captain Twig on this Achilles, even Genetics on Fafnir are going to have a very easy time once the team fight starts up properly, diving this mid laner.
Gold Fury grouping happening here for the Kings, but maybe not a full engage as Tings has just lost the beads, but he goes back in. So, hello, sir, you've got no beads, and it's going to cost him his ultimate on the way out. And Genetics going to be able to use it as well, as Polar Bear Mike dropped his own ult, and that ends up being pretty darn impactful. The big man Tings playing with fire a little bit there, going back into the fray, and that loss of tempo for the Camelot Kings may end up costing them this Gold Fury. It's down to about half HP. Remember, no ultimate for PBM, and that matters quite a bit, as Variety is here alongside Sanford Soccer, who's got a great flank in. Genetics is the target, as he's already used that ultimate, but not a big commit quite yet. Ultimate coming in from Variety, blocks off Sam, but Netrioid's ultimate doesn't do quite enough. On the backside, Final K now getting lower, but Fatal Strike used as a defensive option for Captain Twig this time. Much ado about nothing so far, as everyone limps away roughly about half HP.
Surprised that Jade Dragons don't keep up their pressure. They start that fight because of, well, big man Tings, not to mince words, beefing it a little bit in the mid lane, and immediately they group up on gold, force the engagement, and the Camelot Kings step up and use just about every single one of their ultimates. The majority of their defensive relics are down as well. I'm surprised the Dragons, with the sustain advantage having the Terra, don't continue that engagement, but instead it's a reset back to neutral. We're going to go ahead and wait for our own ultimates to come back up before we regroup and try that one again.
Maybe lack of secure on the Dragon side. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of guaranteed burst damage. That is not Morgan Le Fay's strong suit. Really, it's probably Izanami ult that does the most damage for your confirm on the Dragon side, and that was down for Panda Cat. So, because I agree with you, I think that I'm a little surprised they backed up, but maybe that could have been their reasoning, as it resets the game back to neutral. The Jade Dragons, despite the struggles for Sam being down a little bit in XP, he's closed that gap. Big man Tings' gap has actually widened. He's up 2 levels now over Herwind. Typical for Giannis players to be ahead because of all the farm they get access to. But the gold lead still ever so slightly in favor of the Dragons. Not so much that I would even call it a lead.
No, and now the Jade Dragons have the more distinct advantage of having every single one of their beads still available to them, whereas the Camelot Kings have got 30 seconds left on Big Man Ting's. Variety a little bit over a minute as well. So this is a point of contention and a good power play moment for the Jade Dragons if they recognize this opportunity, and that's a dangerous back from Big Man Tings. Does have the ultimate available if he is forced to use it to rotate towards the Gold Fury, but for now, both of these teams very comfortable with a slower pace to this one. Both squads scale relatively well into the late game, but I think I might give the advantage to the Camelot Kings because they drafted so well around this LaFay.
Yeah, the LaFay could struggle, but I don't know. I feel like anytime I'm seeing Terra, I'm liking that team's odds come late game. That ultimate just turns out to be such a game changer, and that's really been the Camelot Kings strategy as of late, is pick Terra, wait till late game, press 4, win for free. And the Kings draft Fafnir first overall. I'm not surprised the Dragons took Terra, but I'm a little surprised they took Terra against the team that normally takes her when they'd already gotten their support.
Yeah, it is an interesting selection here, and that just goes to show how much homework both of these teams have been doing on each other. Both squads now grouping up around these oracles, and could be a skirmish. Looks like San Francisco's not willing to let it go.
Just want to try and split those the very least, and split indeed they will. This way neither team gets that guaranteed unremovable vision around the first Gold Fury of the game, because neither team has been able to secure enough of an advantage in order to get it. And as I was just talking about, this type of style and pace has been pretty typical for the Camelot Kings. The Jade Dragons at the very beginning of the season, pedal to the metal, you know, full high-octane Smite. They were not messing around. Now, it seems like with the recent struggles, maybe they're trying to go back to the basics, go back to just typical team fighting, and see where that takes them, and they've built a good comp to do it.
But the Jade Dragons did try to bring that typical style. In the early game, it was red buff invade. They tried to step up to the blue buff as well, but it's Camelot Kings with this nice reaction counterpunch style a la the Olympus Pulse that keeps them inside of it. Taking a peek at this build, Icavale picked up by Panda Cat, Odysseus Bow just going straight down that attack speed tree. Interesting, not really a great purveyor of the Silver Branch.
No, Silver Branch is going to be coming next, but check out his starter item. It's Benevolence.
Whoa.
As an ADC.
Neato.
What is that? Can we take a look at the net worth charts? Holy, look at that. He's up 1,000 gold over Netrioid, and you got to imagine that's because of Benevolence, because I don't know where else that would be coming from.
And Netrioid's 2-0, by the way.
Netrioid's 2-0, and you know what? I don't think that this is something that you could probably get away with on every Hunter, but Izanami certainly doesn't need the help clearing, or really boxing for that matter, in the early stages. The auto attacks and the 2 will kind of do that for you anyways. An interesting strat here for Panda Cat is kind of paying off right now. He's up a boatload of gold, but that means he's a lot of the lead, and Captain Twig's trying to take him out, but a good impale from Netrioid shoves Sam for soccer back. Doesn't he end up consuming that ultimate as a blink in from Variety. Walls off Sam, still has the beads, and now will use the ultimate. Another beads in response from Variety as you're starting to sense a trend. Fine, okay, big ultimate forces the Aegis from Netrioid, who again says, I'm not interested in having you in my face. Variety with a good peel, but the Fatal Strike doesn't land from Captain Twig. Heroine's ultimate is going to tear through Twig, and that's the first kill of this engagement for the Dragons, and they don't want it to be the last. Double dash forward from Polar Bear Mike, forces beads from Big Man Tings, as it is a relic fest here in this left side duo lane. Look at the relic situation on both teams. 1 relic left standing on the side of the Jade Dragons, 2 on the side of the Camelot Kings, but it's the Dragons who are healthy enough to try and pull this gold.
Big Man Tings doesn't have the ultimate available, so has to walk in there the old-fashioned way. Genetics, what are you doing, bud? Can't just walk into that.
Variety had his ultimate back up, but no follow-up available. A knock-up is enough to knock him down. It's a double for Sam for soccer, as the Fury still leashed by the Jade Dragons and will get finished off. It's, 3 kills in total for the Dragons and a Gold Fury on top of that.
The Camelot Kings are the ones that start up all that aggression. It was originally them diving the tier 1 tower, trying to punish Panda Cat for going this build, and well, it doesn't work out. If you're going to step up that far, you might as well finish off your kills, because given the opportunity, the Jade Dragons are able to rotate in and immediately turn that one around. The big turning point of that team fight has to be the blink forward from PBM. I think it was a 4-man Earthern Fury, and that's not including his own team. Maybe call it 8-man, as it heals every single one of his teammates. And now the Jade Dragons, in one fell swoop, 18 minutes into this game, finally established some separation, just about 3,000 gold.
It's almost like play Terra, get to late game, press 4, win. Huh?
What is this disrespect? Terra's hard to play, man.
No, I get it, but getting an ultimate like that will win you the game easily. As Fire Giant is a call from the Dragons. Remember, neither team with a lot of relics. Captain Twig included, as he's got a fatal strike away, but Hurlin says no, no, no to the Captain Twig jungler for the Camelot Kings. He falls to the Wildfire from the Morgan Le Fay. 2-0-3 now for the newest god to join the battleground. As instead of the Fire Giant, the Jade Dragons elect for the Pyromancer, but they aren't super interested in committing to that either. They want the fight instead. Knock up on the Netrioid, CC chain, see you later. 3 in a row for Sam for Soccer as the Kings start to limp away, but PBM finds a double root. Genetics the focus now. He does have his Draconic Corruption available if he needs it, but he'll use the portal instead, coming from Big Man Tings, well placed from the Kings mid laner. That's still 2 for 0 for the Dragons, and you're starting to feel this momentum go in their favor because these last 2 fights have been a lot of fireworks, particularly the one before this one, but really have not been particularly close to losing members on the Dragon side.
Look, don't get it twisted. Captain Twig, with that rotation all the way around the Fire Giant, finds himself in great position with the Jade Dragons having already pulled it, but maybe pulls his own trigger a little bit too quickly. Goes in, gets forced out, dies immediately to the Wildfire. Had he waited just 3, maybe 4 seconds for the rest of the Kings to get there, that fight likely goes in their favor. Just a little bit over eager to get involved inside of that one. Immediately loses his life, and the Jade Dragons kind of remember, hey, we just fought over the Gold Fury. Every single relic for the Kings are down. Maybe let's just chase them out here. Let's land some CC, and that's exactly what happens. Jade Dragons now with all the momentum.
Panicat has now upgraded his starter item. Doesn't have to wait until 20 like Netrioid will have to. Instead, he gets the Animosity at level 17. So a bit of a weird strategy so far for the ADC for the Jade Dragons, but paying off as he's finished off the Silver Branch as well. That is a huge power spike for Izanami, who, for my money, has the best steroid in the entire game. That one, it just goes crazy.
It really does, but lacking a little bit of penetration inside of this build, maybe goes towards something like the Dominance, maybe something like the Titan's Bane to short up. Could do it. If he's just loving this yellow damage build, Kin Size comes through, and then all of a sudden, the Camelot King's front line going to be very squishy towards him. I mean, I like it, but the one caveat is, where's the sustain? He doesn't have any.
None. No lifesteal in the build. I like that call. For sure, can't stand and fight like most ADCs would like to, especially ones like Izanami. Genetics has already jumped in, and Sam's going to make him pay for that. Good amount of damage as Final K jumps in. He's looking for an ultimate, and he'll find it. Fatal Strike too early from Captain Twig. I don't think he's found an execute yet in this game, and that has been a problem for the Kings. Good wall from Variety. Stops the advance, and Big Man Tig shoots and scores. A big ultimate onto Final K, but that's all that has gone right for the Camelot Kings now, as another big ultimate from PBM turns the tides. They only lose Final K. Captain Twig and Netrioid, on the other hand, fall for the Kings. But maybe with that frontliner removed, the Dragons won't be able to pull this Fire Giant with a ton of confidence. They're going to pull it nonetheless, but now they're down 1 member.
That's almost best case scenario for the Camelot Kings. Great wall from Variety, double snipe, and still not enough.
Fire Giant down to about 30%. Sam and Panicat tanking it up, and Genetics going to jump in and die to the FG. That is not what you're looking for. Sam nearly did the same, but not both Sams dying to the FG. We can't have that. Sam for Soccer will be the survivor. Sam, a.k.a. Genetics, will not, unfortunately, as now it's 10-4 for the Jade Dragons, 4 members with the Fire Giant buff. And they've been controlling these team fights effectively. I don't know how the Kings get a better fight than a 3-man lock-in by the Cabrakan ultimate into a 2- or 3-man through space in time for Big Man Tings. And those are the ones that really mess with your confidence, at least it messed with mine back in the day, where you feel like everything went right, and you still lost the team fight.
Cool. I'm glad that you explained it towards the end there, because I was like, there's no way you're hitting 3-man snipes just about ever.
Thank you. I was a Giannis one-trick, please.
Oh, yeah. Well, you were a one-trick, but I'm not sure it was a Giannis, maybe a Raijin. But let's not go ahead and debate that. Instead, we can talk about the play on field here. Camelot Kings have decent defense. It's not the best. You don't have the most standard AoE mage. Giannis is going to struggle a little bit more so once the game simplifies on Phoenix or Tier 2 defense. So instead, I think it's going to be about that spearhead composition. The Camelot Kings, from conception of this draft, have been trying to dive onto this Morgan Le Fay. Well, 306 for Hurrywin hasn't quite worked out just yet, but that is still the strategy, and you have to stick to your guns, and they've got the tools to do it. We've seen that 3-man wall. It was great from Variety, just needs a little bit more damage follow-up, and now the Netrioid is starting to hit his power spikes. Maybe he gets involved a little bit more and turns these engagements around.
Final K has also been instrumental in getting these fights started for the Dragons and really absorbing a lot of these cooldowns. He's been doing a great job of staying up front, and he hasn't even upgraded his starter item yet. That makes a big difference for you as a solo laner when you get that Sundering Axe, so watch out for that whenever Final K does ding over to level 20. As the Dragons start crossing their T's and dotting their I's, left side tier 2 has already fallen. They'll knock down the mid tier 2 as well. About 2 minutes left on this Fire Giant buff, and only 1 tower left standing for the Camelot Kings. So you imagine this is going to be wipe the last tier 2, reset, and spend your gold, then start sieging.
Could even just back up to the Pyromancer, get a little bit more gold under their belt as well. Camelot Kings have not stepped up to a tier 2 tower just yet, so don't imagine they do it here either. Instead, the Jade Dragons can pose a difficult question. Do you want to go ahead and wait it out and defend on these Phoenixes? Maybe they reset. Whoa, maybe you look to go in now.
Blink in, trying to catch Hurwin, as many members have already backed. And Hurry has been left for the Wolves,
lifesteal.
But he's going to try and make it happen. That lifesteal looking fantastic. He nearly got Netrioid there, but he will end up falling. Now Twig gonna blink in, stun onto Final K, Fine pops the Thorns as a deterrent. Maybe a please don't hit me sort of option. But Big Man still finds the portal, doesn't want to get too overextended, even with that good damage, because here comes Sam. Blink in, Sunder on top of him. King's tried to turn around and fire it, and he didn't land it, but he didn't need it, because the rest of the damage was there from the King. Sam ends up falling as well. Now it's 2 dead members of the Jade Dragons. With still 55 seconds left to go on this Fire Giant, they will not be getting a Phoenix with this FG buff.
Man, that was a frame-perfect engage from Variety. Blinks in, finds the wall the very second PBM gets back to base. Hurrywin left high and dry, and, well, almost fought his way out of there. That lifesteal build putting in a ton of work for Morgan Le Fay, almost turning that one around. Netroid falls down to about 20% HP, but that call from Sanford Soccer to re-engage 1 versus 3, gotta just call it as it is. That was questionable. It was a strange decision to go in there. Maybe thought he could tie up his cape and be the hero, but when you're this far ahead, we don't need hero plays. Just be the good soldier that you are and continue doing what you have been doing. Instead, now the Camelot Kings in a great position.
They're grouping up, looking to set a trap, but no one waltzing into that side of the jungle quite yet for the Jade Dragons. Now Final K will be the first, but that's the last one you want to be seeing because he's got Magi's. He's going to be able to spot them all out. Magi's procced. Good damage coming from Hurwind over the wall. Sigil Mastery ends up chunking as he has now finished off his Sacrificial Shroud, so even more lifesteal and even more damage for this Morgan Le Fay. And now by trying to set this trap, the Kings have kind of set off their tempo a little bit. They've lost this potential advantage around setting up these wards. It's the Dragons who are going to have the first opportunity in order to get in there and get these wards, and Mike is looking for it. Ultimate expended on a Netrioid.
Wow.
He hit everyone with that Earth and Fury. Variety just trying to disengage the fight, but Final K is going to knock one up. Make sure that it doesn't still stay that as a good fight for the Jade Dragons, but that cost a lot for the Camelot Kings. 3 ultimates on their side just to try and disengage.
Camelot Kings have lost the right to step up to the Fire Giant at this point. They don't have any ground to stand on. Sure has not spawned just yet, but the Jade Dragons, with this composition, are going to be able to burn it down so quickly. Instead, they are looking to set up another ambush. Maybe if the Camelot Kings do step up, catch someone lacking. They're trying to turn the tables a little bit. This is exactly what the Kings were doing just a moment ago, but I think that the Kings make the right call. They say, look, there's no way we can step up to this Fire Giant. Instead, let's push the waves up and left as far as we can, maybe grab a tower, head back to base, and try our hand at a defense.
They'll grab the Draugr as a consolation prize, but that's about all they'll get. It is the Jade Dragons with their second Fire Giant in the game now, 27-25. As that objective falls down. We're starting to see full build come through for the vast majority of the Dragons. I don't think they really need to reset too much, and I think they're agreeing. They will not even push up the mid lane, instead immediately trying to pressure out this right side Phoenix, but the Kings have responded in kind. Everyone has returned from their little foray over to the left-hand side. And this is the only spot the Dragons can fight. They've not got a wave anywhere else.
And all the Dragons have to do here, Aggro, is go in, burn some resources, and then immediately leave.
PBM's gone in, tried to burn some resources with his Blink ultimate, but not really done so quite yet. Variety finds another good ultimate in the back line, but again, a lack of follow-up ends up coming to pass as Netrioid is getting harassed by Final K, and Hurwin get a step up and finish what his solo laner started. The Dragons starting to siege in towards the Titan as the right side Phoenix falls. They've only gotten Netrioid despite really wiping that team fight pretty cleanly. It did cost them 4 ultimates. Still 2 up here for the Kings. Double stun there onto Captain Twig, and he's in a little bit of trouble now as a good ultimate came through from Panda Cat. A better one for Big Man Tings as that knocked Panda Cat down to a sliver of HP. Variety takes the expressway to the back line, but that was the wrong side to go to. He ends up getting cleaned up, but Sam bit off a little bit too much in the mid lane. He falls to the two-man dive from Big Man Tings and Genetics. Those are the only two left standing now for the Camelot Kings. They jump towards Panda Cat. Panda Cat gonna go in as the Dragons begin to commit towards that Titan. Titan down to 25, 10, 5. See ya. Game 1 goes to the Jade Dragons.
Aggro, they skipped a step, man. I said go in, burn resources, get out. They went in, burned the Kings, and then took out the Titan right afterward.
Yeah.
Jade Dragons looking like they're a little bit revitalized here today.
A little bit more like themselves, I would
Yes.
say. Definitely a little bit of a different play style, as we covered, more late game than we typically see from the Jade Dragons. But don't forget that this is a team that did late game very well all last year and earlier
When
this
they
year
were
when they
allowed
need
to.
When they needed to. Right, exactly. That's kind of what it came down to. Game 1 goes to the Jade Dragons, but the Camelot Kings are not an easy opponent to 2-0. We'll see if they can bounce back right after a quick break.
Good afternoon, Smite fans, and welcome back to the Smite Pro League powered by Alienware. And we've had a really exciting matchups all throughout today. Camelot Kings versus the Jade Dragons, and Jade Dragons will become out of this one victorious. But before we get into the breakdown of all the action that just took place from game number 1, I want to remind you guys back at home that you too can support the league a little bit more directly if you so desire by heading on over to shop.smiteproleague.com and cop in some of this delicious Smite Pro League drip, basically. I mean, can't go wrong with keeping it simple, Gore. And I think the color scheme's obviously a little bit more up our alleyway.
I just thought I want a like SBL button down. Like I want like the logo or like right here on the pocket. I'd wear that on
Baseball
broadcast
jersey.
a lot. Okay, yes, I want that. The 3/4 tees are like my favorite shirts to wear, so I would spend way too much money on that, actually. Hold on, wait, let's not do that.
No. Always been a fan, of course. But just like you guys back at home, like I said, shop.smiteproleague.com if you want to actually show a little bit of that support while you're at home watching all this gaming action take place. But again, Gore, Camelot Kings, they fell short here in game number 1 up against the Jade Dragons, and while the early game looked a little bit closer, we saw Sam getting off to a hot start with that Erlong.
Yeah, I think he was able to, again, the setup, I thought it was going to be a little more contested, that Twig would really want it because we saw a lot of highlights from that, but it just made things so much smoother for the Dragons whenever that 9 turns blessing comes through. I mean, you just get such big taunts, the pins are so good, and realistically, it's difficult. Earlier in the first set, what you could see is with an Osiris on your team, an Erlong on your team, I think there was a Rom on your, like, a lot of attack speed, it's much easier to itemize against them then. Here, are you really going to try to focus down just the Erlong? Nah, Sam's going to have the time of his life, and he got a lot of it throughout that game.
Not only that, but the follow-up that he had as well from
Morgan.
Hurrywin on that Morgan Le Fay. It was just so much burst damage. It was a lot for the Camelot Kings to actually try and keep up with, especially once you fall behind against such a heavy burst composition. It gets really hard, Gore, to try and rein things back underneath control. And I also think that Captain Twig here, specifically on that Achilles, this matchup definitely panned out, I guess, with that risk versus reward kind of territory that's usually involved with these sort of warrior matchups in the jungle, where if you don't get that early start, like what we saw happening for Sam, usually you're just on the receiving end of all that aggression.
I mean, I'm marveling at the fact that Big Man Tings was able to get out about the same amount of damage as Hurry, but like the drastic difference between the two, right? Hurry getting all of those kills, a lot of survivability, not really worried about the pressure that's coming onto him because of the peel that he has from everybody else. The setup from the Dragons just felt like it was better for team fights, whereas, I mean, the Cabrakan, the Achilles, it just felt so disjointed from the King's Taco that I don't know. I think you might just go back to the drawing board for this one.
And don't want to get it twisted either. Big Man Tings on that Giannis, we saw some great through space in times.
Yeah.
I think there was one particularly where it was near the Fire Giant blue buff side. Tings actually hits a great through space in time, and then nothing happens except for an immediate collapse by the Jade Dragons into the King's composition.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of, for me, it was a little bit of that emphasis that we had about how is this actual execution going to play out for the Camelot Kings. It just seemed as though it was a little too disjointed, like you'd mentioned.
Especially because of the Dragons' playstyle into it. Like, it was one of those things that I think the Kings run that draft against some of the other teams, and it puts up the same competition early game, but maybe transitions a little better into that late game, maybe has some more success hits. But the Dragons like to take things like this draft apart and like to peel teams like this apart. And so far, it's I think 4, now 5-1 in favor of the Dragons in this matchup. So they definitely seem to have the Kings figured out a little bit more than the Kings do.
Well, Gore, you talked about the Kings needing to hit the drawing board. They're going to be first pick one more time here for the Camelot Kings as they tried to ramp things out to a 3-game series like what we saw in set number 1 today. But what are some of the adaptations that you would like to see the Kings make for game number 2 here?
I really liked the Fafnir first pick, but I will say, like, the Giannis, I think it was more the things around the Giannis than the Giannis itself, although it wasn't a big pick for Tings prior to this. I wouldn't mind seeing them maybe try to make a pivot. That Morgan treated a lot of these teams pretty well, maybe not them in their first matchup where they picked her up, but going for something like that, they Baba Yaga as well, they've played that. I think Merlin was there yesterday. There's a lot of options for them in mid that I think open up a lot of the conversations, but it really does come down to the Kabrak and Achilles. I think their top 3 were fine. I think that's where I pivot. Maybe you change something up a little bit in the solo lane, and then change up maybe where the jungle is going as well, which admittedly wasn't Twig's fault. He just had a lot of bans his way.
And that's the thing, is that Twig having to prioritize his gods so late in the draft really just gave a prime opportunity for the Dragons to punish, I think, and that was kind of evident with how they chose to prioritize their picks and bans as well. Made sure to lock in Sam's pick in that third pick selections that they could really just harbor in on trying to make Twig as uncomfortable as possible. And while they were successful, have to keep noting, Kings, they don't seem to really want to bother trying to deal with all the pressure that Artemis has been bringing to light in these duo lanes. But side lanes in general, Gore, how do you think that played out for the Kings?
Honestly, it was one that just didn't quite fall in their favor. Again, early game, it felt really fine. The minute Sam got involved, though, is when things, I think, started to fall apart for them. And that's the shakeup that I think they had to deal with and are going to have to deal with. Because Artemis being gone, theoretically, that makes things so much simpler, right? Hey, I don't have to worry about that. But Panda Cat was willing to pull out a lot. They had to ban the Artemis and the Ullr and the Rom last time around, and even then, you had a very good game on Izanami of all things, like not even the next top hunter that's technically there for the tier list. So I feel like, at least hunter-wise, like Artemis makes sense to get rid of, but maybe for the last 2 bans, if they haven't picked one up by then, maybe that's where the Kings can also alleviate some stress and focus elsewhere.
Well, after a lot of deliberation, the Kings have decided upon Gilgamesh in that first pick position, but the response from Jade Dragons to immediately look for the Amir, I like this because it introduces some solid control for the Jade Dragons.
Yes.
It's fairly open-ended in terms of which direction they want to try and take this Amir pick, whether it's opting for a little bit more of that early to mid-game pressure or just more of that setup in general. But also want to know, we have seen Sam opt for a Wheelish in these sorts of predicaments when dealing with the likes of Gilgamesh. Do you think that might be a possibility here?
I wouldn't mind seeing it. I don't know. I guess technically with Morgan Le Fay there might be some synergy. Like there's maybe a conversation to be had that 3v3 comes, let's just kill people, like Ymir play setup, everybody else follow through. But I like it, like you said, into the Gilgamesh just because it's a good pick for Sam, period. Add in the fact that it's going to give him a little bit of a counter matchup is going to make things a lot nicer for him.
And do you think that this is the Kings just feeling comfortable with how well they can actually control and handle Morgan Le Fay, or is it them just kind of accepting a pick your poison sort of ordeal? Do we want the Gilgamesh first pick even if it means giving up the Morgan Le Fay?
I think it's one, and I'm actually kind of curious about it because when we saw the Kings first pick Morgan Le Fay, the Leviathans just went, okay, cool, we're going to get a heavy dive draft and make you regret it. And this time around, twice now, the Dragons have picked it up in their top 2. And Gilgamesh fits that a little bit. Raijin has some long-range damage, so they should be able to hit Heroine a little more often. But it's nowhere near the extent that we saw on Friday versus the Kings. And so I want to see them pivot maybe a little bit more towards that, but they've already got what is going to be at least their support, probably their jungler, so solo lane is the big point for them, and the Dragons could easily knock down an Arthur or a couple of picks here.
We'll want to bring things back to that range discussion that you just touched on, because Raijin up against the Morgan Le Fay, they've both got those distance ultimates like you were just talking about,
Yeah.
but do you feel as though the Taiko drums could potentially be a little bit more impactful, or Raijin in general, just because he does have a lot of slows to attribute to the team fight?
Dude, Taiko drums are nuts. They're like normally it's just damage. That's already great. But having a fear and a taunt, whether you're peeling for you or your team, or you're trying to pull them back in there, like if I'm looking to pull Hurry into a fight and into an engagement, I think Raijin's going to be my go-to on this. It might be, I don't want to say difficult to hit. Taiko drums are wide and Morgan has no mobility. So theoretically, you should be able to lock that down. Granted, you have a Ymir and a Cucullin to deal with that are theoretically trying to get to you. I said theoretically way too many times in that sentence. They're gonna get to you. They're going to chase you down. So I think for Raijin, it's a good ult. It's just the follow-up alongside it. What else can they have outside of Gilgamesh? What are they going to lock in for Netrulite?
Well, it seems as though Jade Dragon's a little bit more preoccupied with worrying about what Variety is trying to actually take for himself in that solo lane. Tyr, Sobek going to join the other bands already opted for by the Jade Dragons here, and it's just evident if we base it off the Kings' history from what we've seen in recent weeks, Gore, they have definitely been prioritizing a lot of these double Guardian compositions. Do you think that the Kings could still lean towards a Guardian choice here, like the Kabrakan, or do you feel as though they might be better off just kind of trying to shift elsewhere?
If they can think of one that can be aggressive, the issue is, and we've seen this with the Sobek specifically, but you get that Guardian over there, they're tanky, they can be the front line that you want. But if there's no follow-up, that doesn't mean anything, right? And I think that's kind of the big problem is you get this Kabrak, and he's over there, he's able to get in there, he set things up, and it doesn't matter. He's not going to be able to do it all on his own versus the Warriors, which still can't do it all on their own, but they at least do a little more on their own. They're going to make you regret it. If you're like, I can hear mid laners and hunters everywhere saying, oh, they can't do it all. Huh? They're 100-0ing me enough. They're able to kill you off. They're able to chase you down and at least win maybe some of those 1v1s. But I think a lot of this, if you go to a Guardian, you better be able to dive. You better be able to get to that Morgan Le Fay, because that's the Sobek, the tier, everything that has been stripped away from you was to take that away.
Well, Gore, you mentioned regrets. Do you think that there might be some regrets for Sam here on that? I have to assume that it's Nike Jungle at this point. Could potentially be wrong, but would have to lean a little bit more towards the Colin in that solo role for Fine OK. It just makes a little bit more sense in terms of actually having that box aggression to deal with variety, and seems as though it could be either or with the Cerberus and the Terra. Leaning a little bit, I think, towards Terra solo as opposed to the Cerberus, but again, really either direction here. But Sunder has just been such a huge dominating factor here in the league. Gore. And when you're Nike, yes, she can have an okay matchup into the Gilgamesh, but do you feel as though the Kings could maybe just look to try and turn and burn Sam at all corners?
Probably. It's one of those ones that, just as a matchup-wise, or just in general as a god, Nike is so hit or miss. Sometimes she just seems to absolutely take over. And I think what you said is perfect. Are you going for the Sunder early on to try and burn Sam down? Are you going for a Heavenly because you know that those slows are going to be oppressive? And then where are they? Is it, one on Nike, or not Nike, one over there on the Cerberus in the solo lane for variety, and then one over there for the Terra as well? Are you going 2 Sunders? Which one of them is going to try and pick up these counters? How often are you engaging specifically this Nike? Or are you just hoping that Sam doesn't get off to a good start and then maybe level 12 is going to be your day? I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch how they handle it, but also difficult to handle nonetheless. There's a lot of answers to the Nike. They just got to get it right.
And it seems that the Jade Dragons have some responses of their own as far as what the Kings have actually taken for their full composition. Chiron going to be the last lock-in pick here for the Jade Dragons, and this pick could be really interesting for Pandacat. He could have a huge set here, Gore, just because when you look at a lot of the crowd control for the Camelot Kings, it is a ton of just that single target burst, aside from the counter initiation. So I feel like with the cleanses that Chiron's able to provide off that training exercise, could be difficult for the likes of a Rom, for the likes of a Ryzen to actually survive when the front line's able to actually just fully stick and commit.
And we know, Pandacat was playing this Chiron kind of slightly before everyone else picked him up, although it was in the same week. He was maybe just the first one we saw do it. And he has been the one that has had better matchups with and against it. I think he's going to know this one pretty well. I'm curious to see how the Rom handles this, though, because he's kind of been the new hotness.
Well, this is up to the Camelot Kings to decide if we're going to see a Game 3 here or not up against the Jade Dragons. Aggro, Mifflin, you guys know what to do.
Gore, real quick, before you leave the studio, it's not ROM is the new hotness, it's esports is the new hotness. Easy to mess that one up. Yeah, esports is the new hotness. I know. It's all right. We all get it wrong sometimes. Mifflin and Aggro here for game number 2. We'll see if the Jade Dragons can keep their momentum rolling as they look to have returned to form potentially and how well they've been playing in this set. But Miff, you heard him talking about on the desk, we got to bring up this Nike first and foremost. Mannequin Scepter Nike here for Sam.
Hey, look, you need, 2-3 auto attacks to get the full value from that dot damage? Well, a knock-up is going to set you up pretty well for that, but Mannequin Scepter, interesting selection. Not often we see an auto attack Nike, and with that Mace pickup as well, wouldn't be surprised if, with Mannequins already, goes towards the Crusher inside of that first slot.
Could be.
This is an interesting pick, and it is the highlight of this match, I'd say, but maybe more so the Camelot Kings showing a little bit of gumption here. Oh, you think you could just play Morgan Le Fay? You think you could just lock her in whenever you want? Let's draft 5 die this time around. Netroid from the air, and the rest of them just going to W key you the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, but you got a staunch front line here potentially, as Sam is already getting involved in the mid lane, but a blink in from Captain Twig after the fact is going to get the beads from Heroin, so well worth Captain Twig's blink. Of course, Morgan Le Fay, not exactly the most mobile character. Level 2, level 5, level 20, doesn't really matter. She's not really getting out of the way too easily as Pandacat tries to get out of the way of Genetics combo. This Chiron pickup is an interesting one for me, Miff, because this is one of Pandacat's best gods. If you hear him talking, he thinks that he's really, really solid on this one, though what god does Panda think he's bad at, to be fair. But Chiron was meta. Panda wasn't playing a lot of it. Now it seems like Chiron has really fallen off in the meta because of the build more than anything else. But here he is, playing the Chiron anyways.
And he's going for the build anyways. It's not Transcendence, it's not Bluestone, it is just Cowl into bows, and you got to think he's going to keep going down that bow tree. I'm interested to see how Panda Cat try to shift up this build maybe to fit Chiron's style some more. But here in Season 8 and Part 2, we're 14 games deep on a Chiron, 36% win rate for this god. Has not had the greatest performance insofar as consistency, but we cannot take away from that early game presence. Still, Giddy Up is one of the most threatening tools that a Hunter has, and matched up with something like Ymir could put a lot of threat on board. But so far, the Camelot Kings are just clearing the wave faster.
I feel like I love the Chiron matchup for Chiron up against Rom. I mean, what does Rom do when you dash at him? Like, he's got a shorter range dash than you. Right, that's it. And I'm just closer afterwards. Like, you feel like you've got a good kill potential in that lane if you're Panda Cat. We'll see if that comes to pass. As back to the Morgan Le Fay goes Whirlwind, near the top of the player damage charts last game, made it look pretty darn good despite all that dive coming from the Kings. Really, the only misstep was when he was abandoned. Everyone else had backed before he could get his off. BBM gets stunned. He's in some trouble. Nice double freeze, but Twig is here, and the body block is perfect from this Monolith. Genetics makes it happen, but it's Twig that gets the first blood.
Just trying to defend his purple buff. Poor PBM. Hurrywin starts his rotation in, gets caught out by Big Man Ting's great aggression early on from the Camelot Kings. And Genetics looks at PBM, says, look, man, Terra, I can do it too, and he's certainly doing it already.
He's already doing it. Hurrywin, no beads, dash in, stun.
Oh
not
my
there,
God!
But the body block is, somebody stop this man. Genetics has killed 2 people, has gotten credit for neither, but it's been entirely because of his using the geometry, and now Sam for Soccer's angry about it. Blink in from Mike as well. Fear entirely is used on those Tycho drums, and the wall gives Genetics a taste of his own medicine. A nice stun onto Sam, but Genetics has got nowhere to go. Finally, someone puts an end to the madness that is the Genetics Terra.
No, I'd argue that Genetics does even more there. Even in death, he makes sure that Big Man Tings gets away, sets up some kills for his squad. Genetics putting on a masterclass on what I want from all my support. Set me up and die. Yep. I mean, if you're living, you're making a mistake. If I'm dead and you're not, you're playing it wrong. And Genetics seems to be of similar mind, is willing to die for his teammate, and rightfully so, and even maintains BMT's beads throughout all of that. Yeah, no, I'm not slating him even in the slightest. Genetics doing everything 4 minutes in.
Definitely the how you should play Terra, not 101. This is an advanced class.
It's 206 or whatever. I don't know.
Like
I dropped out.
Yeah. Maybe you got to 206. There was higher than that, but we don't have to talk about it. That's good enough for me. 206 it is for Genetics Terra class. And with that now, Big Man Ting's up a level over Hurrywin. That's not something you want to see when you're the Morgan Le Fay, because if you don't pose enough threat that you can punish the Raijin for jumping on you, then he's probably just going to jump on you.
And he should continue to do so. I mean, that's the matchup. That's why they locked in Raijin. They wanted the ability to just shut down Le Fay with their core 3v3, and not many gods in the mid lane are as aggressive as Raijin. The Raiju into Thunderclap is just about enough. I'm not sure that even once Hurrywin gets a couple more lifesteal items, he'll be able to survive that initial burst. Big Man Ting's benefiting from about a 3/4 level lead, and Genetics looking for another invade.
Ultimate dropped by Genetics, but purple buff is secured. Looks like the Dragons don't want any part of this fight, and for good reason, as Genetics Earth and Fury did come out. But it's a secured purple buff for the Jade Dragons. They don't lose anyone for that Terra ultimate, but Gorp will go down here for the Camelot Kings. They get at least something with their pressure, but not as much as they wanted.
Sam for Soccer actually a level up on Captain Twig inside the jungle. Does not elect to go for the Crusher. Instead, Jotun's Wrath, a great stat stick now here in Season 8. 50 power, tons of CDR, some mana as well. And Sam for Soccer not going to be struggling for survivability on this Nike, considering no Sunder selection as of yet from the Camelot Kings. Good point. Means that he's just straight up got a second HP bar that the Kings are going to have to whittle through if they want to win out inside of these fights. I'm excited to see where the Jade Dragons try and establish some of their pressure, because it's not going to be in mid aggro. No way you want to play around your Le Fay until like level 15.
Variety steps up to try and seal away the Scorpion, and he does not do so. He will pick up 2, and Twig is here with that Winds of Shamash, but he knows that this is a scary fight for him. Sam's got to get the ultimate off, and he does just in time, but then he gets rooted by the end of that ultimate. Hurrywin get a waltz in. Variety not in the right part.
Twig?
Now Twig just really hungry hungry for those kills because he had Genetics and Tings on the way, but they were too far to help him. It's a double kill for Whirlwind, who is all of a sudden right back in a great position in this game.
Man, I could see the gears working in Twig's head. Look, he shielded so long ago, bro. It's falling off any second. I need one ability. I'm going to get my kill, drop kick, whatever it has to be, and I'm going to get out. Does not work out for him this time around, and instead, W keys straight into his own death. The Camelot Kings are off to a much better start here in Game 2, but already the Jade Dragons have closed up that gap and instead put it in their own wallet. 600 gold in favor of the Dragons, and that pressure is going to continue to grow. Morgan Le Fay, so strong in the late game, I'm willing to argue she's in that conversation of, I'm putting this match on a timer. Similar to something like a Kronos or a Kali, that's how strong she is, given a couple items.
We saw Whirlwind get to that point last game and certainly made it count on the Morgan, or the Morgan Le Fay. That's the first of many for all of us.
Let's
casters,
just say Le Fay.
Yeah, I could.
You should.
I won't. All right, Draugr is the call now for the Camelot Kings. I'm interested in seeing where Sam goes with this build overall. So he does it. I was expecting something like a Void Shield here potentially, or an Anchile or something like that, but ends up going for more power, it looks like, with a Mace 1. I think that we saw Venenu go Mannequin's Hidden Blade on Mannequin's Morrigan mid in the last set. I think this is going to be a Mannequin's Hidden Blade Nike that is just poking out the opposition come late game for a lot of their HP.
If she is going for that poke build, maybe it's going to be a Crusher off this Mace slot, just get a little bit of more dot damage from a range, but more likely,
it has to be
probably going
right?
to be the Brawler's Beat Stick, just to get some of that anti-heal to roll its way through. Up against something like Terra that Genetics is piloting, that's a stain. I know it only ticks for like 20, but it ticks for 20 a lot of times. You want to be able to mitigate at least some of that inside of these team fights. Gold Fury has spawned up, and Jade Dragons with the lead likely going to be the ones to show up there first.
Wonder if Whirlwind's going to be able to fit a Divine Ruin in this build, because the way that it's going so far, right? Pythag's into Typhons. I feel like he needs it. I mean, you just cannot get away with not anti-healing Terra ult as much as you can. It's not, maybe they're going to not let him, or force him to get Divine and let Mike get an Ankh instead.
Or a Pestilence.
Yeah. Pestilence already done for fine, okay.
Oh,
so,
you're right.
So you've got one there. Brawlers is the expected pickup here for Sam. Maybe it's just going to be Ankh for Mike. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know. Ankh probably feels fine on Ymir in this matchup as Genetics got aggressive and now is regretting his decision and instantly pops the ultimate. Twig going to go in with him. Ultimate is good on the Genetics and Sam's going to claim him as Panda Cat is rotated early as well. Netrioid has joined the fray, but Twig is in the midst of 4 and he's not wearing a Dragon's jersey anymore. Not like last year as big man Tings has to use the beads. Netrioid up and Sam for soccer down. That's simple for the Camelot Kings Hunter, but now he's out of mana and Panda Cat is going to slow him down, forces the beads. Tings cleaned up by Fine OK and Netrioid cleaned up by Panda Cat. 7 in total now for the Jade Dragons, and Variety walks into a blood-littered street not knowing what happened to his team.
Man, that's visceral. Yo, calm down, Agri. You got me feeling some kind of way with that call. Variety does show up just a little bit too late to help his team. Looks both ways and said, where are my boys at? They're in the grayscale screen, bud. A little bit slow on the rotation as Fine OK was able to finish off that kill inside of the Tier 2 tower. I was surprised that Whirlwind just kind of let Netrioid land, went all the way around. Maybe that fight goes a little bit longer because of that, but at the end of the day, Jade Dragons, it's hard to argue against the statistics, and, well, they're leaning in their favor. 1,500 gold, 7-3, 10 minutes in, as many kills as we've had minutes, and the scaling is only going to get worse.
Gold Fury's pulled, but it's by the Kings, as the rest of the Dragons a little slow to reset. Mike and Panda Cat, the only ones
50.
local. They haven't reset either. Dragons have gotten the Pyromancer, which makes me think they're just trading this one off, and they will. But Mikey might get traded at the same time, pick up from the Stygian Torment, and that should spell the end for the support for the Jade Dragons. Big man Tings gets credit, 2-1-1 now for the Raijin mid.
Wingblade pickup for Mike there, and he's going to have a good deal more survivability. Maybe makes it out of that situation had he gone back to base in time. Now it's going to be a lot harder for Variety to lock him down. All these slows on the side of the Camelot Kings. Winds of Shamash, Netrioid's arrows, even Genetics at some points as well. Going to be very hard to lock down PBM, who's essentially got himself just a free ability to walk in. This Ymir was struggling on the engage. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. Even Raiju not going to act as a peel tool. I like this early selection from PBM, and So far, who was the issue in Game 1, Aggro? I mean, it was Hurrywin. He did too much damage, he was free casting, and so far here in Game 2, seems like he's going to be the issue again. 2-1 and 4, he's been allowed to do just about anything he wants.
Twig in trouble. Blink is up for Sam, but he's not going to use it in order to get underneath the tower because Twig had his own, but certainly forced back to base. That lead that we highlighted earlier for Sam has not shrunk. If anything, it's grown 2 levels now for him in the jungle, with Captain Twig actually very bottom of the net worth charts. Only down 500 gold in comparison to Sam, but still the lowest in the game.
And it's a very squishy build from Captain Twig. Stone Cutting Sword and a mace as well. It's just, he needs to get in and deal his damage, but does not have the survivability to do so. Maybe relying on the Earthen Fury from Genetics just to act as that additional effective HP inside of these fights. And you said it last game, get to late game, pop your 4 as Terra and win the team fight. We'll see whether or not that's going to work out here for the Camelot Kings.
Gotta imagine that the Dragons are going to pick up that Ankh if it isn't going to be a Divine Ruin for Hurry, and maybe even if it is, feels like that's the best way to combat that ultimate, as it is a Brawler's beat stick for Sam for Soccer, so you've got that anti-heal built in now at least on 2 members of the Dragons. Panda Cat heading over to his lane, feels like he's streaming. There's 3 people waiting for him, even underneath his own tower at this point, but PBM and Hurry on the way, so now he knows he's not streaming because his teammates are actually coming to help him in this instance.
Don't make me laugh on cast, man. I'm supposed to be casting myself.
That's the whole point.
Yeah,
Look,
that was a pretty good one.
If you're not laughing a little bit during the cast, then I'm probably casting because no one likes my jokes besides me, but I'm laughing when I'm casting, and that's what's most important.
Hey, I like your jokes, bud. Sometimes, sometimes they're all right. The dragon joke last game kind of beefed it a little bit, but not too bad. Variety finds 2 people inside the jungle, jumps over the wall immediately, and disengages. Jade Dragons just keeping up this pressure across the map. Pyromancer already dead. Primal Fury not respawning for a couple of minutes here either. So even if they do find a pick this deep, it's just about the invade.
We've pressed stream again for Panda Cat as Genetics about to dive his tower, but
nice.
Wave is nearly already gone. He gets a dash interrupted, and an ultimate comes out from Genetics as well. Stun is good, or I thought it was, but it actually wasn't. Now Netrioid's going to be in some trouble, but it's Genetics who will survive that last tower shot. But here comes Hurrywin on the cleanup crew. He's got to make it happen now, and he will. Wildfire, Dragonflight, see you later to both members of the duo lane, and Captain Twig has seen enough. No mas, please, sir, as Hurrywin and PBM going to try and chase him down. Blink is already down for Captain Twig. Wall is perfect. Winds of Shamash there is a disengaged tool, but PBM with that wing blade undeterred.
Are you seeing what I'm seeing, Agger? I'm seeing a level 10 Gilgamesh and a level 10 support running them down. Yeah, that is tough.
Yeah, Fine OK puts an end to that level 10 jungler running away, and now Variety walled off yet again from PBM. Rampaging is the right word for Hurrywin. 5 in a row for him. 5-1 and 5, been a part of 10 of the 11 kills for the Jade Dragons. And this Morgan Le Fay performance is making her look awfully good.
Is he playing Le Fay or is he playing Hibois, man? He's just walking at dudes, and it's just working out for him. Sure, spend all that time diving Panda Cat. Here's the thing. Hurry wins the problem. You should have been diving mid. Wrong place to put all your aggression on the side of the Camelot Kings. And, well, Hurrywin reflecting that is 5-1 and 5. But still equal level with his opposition. Big Man Tiggs has not fallen behind just yet, but gotta think Hurrywin's gonna buy just about a full item on this back.
Really should have plenty of gold in hand at this point. Net worth, I'd assume he's probably near the top as well with 5 kills.
Can't be top damage and net worth. Come on, man.
Well, he's top. He's got the most.
Reddit told me this guy was the problem.
2,400. Oh, Reddit has been wrong. I'm not sure Reddit's ever been right, to be honest with you at this point. It is a divine.
They said you're the GOAT caster.
Okay, they've been right once. Netrioid rolls away as Sam for Soccer jumped up and over the wall. Is Sam going potentially for Erendite, potentially for Pridwin? Certainly Erendite more effective with this point in the build, but if he plans to build some more prots later on, Pridwin would certainly be an okay fit.
Yeah, I think it probably will be the Erendite, though, just knowing Sam for Soccer. He loves going for that aggressive styling and will help him out with that dive potential. Still no Sunder selection from the Camelot Kings, means that Sam for Soccer, again, just has 2 HP bars, just has more HP bars than anyone else on the map right now. Gotta think the Kings are just waiting for Genetics to tick over to level 12. I don't want to see the Kings take a fight until that happens, because who's shutting down Sam for Soccer right now? I'm not sure anyone can.
Not sure anyone can. Worth noting as well, of course, that the Pridwin shield doesn't stack with the Nike shield, so I'd assume also it's going to be Erendite, and indeed it will be based on that honed edge. It's got to be Genetics at this point who picks up the Sunder, because Twig certainly cannot afford to forego beads. We see him do it occasionally on picks like Robin,
Not this game.
Gilgamesh has no CC immunity instead of Robin's 2 forms of CC immunity, so no shot, and with him being as far behind as he is, I agree. Don't think we're going to see him go that way. As he did get a katana from his passive pickup, and it looks like he's going to actually put it to good use, working towards a serrated edge would be my guess, but that just continues to be squishy throughout the entire build if he finishes that.
Yeah, he needs some more HP. He's only really allowed to fight if Genetics is already there, already ready inside of the engagement to give him that Earthern Fury, because we've seen what Twig does when he engages. He dies pretty quickly inside of these, and it is going to be a bead selection here from Captain Twig, just getting a little bit more survivability. Not going to help out a lot inside of the team fight, but sometimes you got to be a little bit selfish as a jungler.
Primal Fury, 66%. Remember, the Dragons
no,
have
Genetics.
the lead as Genetics has to blink
Huge.
in. He gets a good ultimate for it. Variety onto Hurwin as he is the focus. Snipe from Netrioid going his way as well, but Hurry is slicing and dicing his way through the front line.
Oh,
Variety has to run. Genetics is already dead, and a blink forward from PBM is going to cause trouble for Variety. That slow didn't land, but the freeze certainly will. Knock up after the fact, but it's not quite enough damage, and Netrioid's putting out good deeps
Twig?
on that front line as Twig jumps in. Double stun off the drop kick, and if he wasn't so far behind, that would have been dope. But here we are, and they're both still
Variety!
alive. Variety nearly killed Panda, not quite frozen. Sam down to 1 HP.
Okay.
And he will fall, but that's the only one it looks like the Dragons are going to lose.
They're still so low. The Jade Dragons can't go to the Fury here. Aggro, big man Tings at full HP is enough threat on board to stop them from going for that neutral objective. But noticing a trend here in these team fights, Hurrywin doesn't have any threat on him. Not a single person has dove onto Hurrywin with purpose. He's been hit, but not really with the intent to kill.
I mean, they tried. They Rom sniped him. They Terra ulted him. They
like one-shot hit.
blinked him.
What?
Now they're Raijin jumping him. But Hurwin's like, dog, are you sure?
Yeah, P-Cat's over here.
Are you sure? Because this is my purple buff, and my boys are here, and yours are not. Big man Tings gets a little aggressive, to say the least, and he'll pay for it. Primal Fury, a foregone conclusion now for the Dragons. They're up 10 kills in 18 minutes, and now that gold lead that didn't look that bad pre-Primal Fury fight looks a lot worse now. Now 4,000 gold, nearly doubling since we talked about it before the Fury.
Bro, the Dragons can just go to the Fire Giant at this point. I mean, these team fights have been cut and dry. Camelot Kings have been able to drop people in low HP, but it feels like it's always been acceptable parameters for the Jade Dragons. Like, yeah, PBM's 10%, but like, who cares? It's PBM. He's a support. We're not too concerned about him, and he's already got a 2-level lead. We're 19 minutes in, Aggro. Genetics still doesn't have his second relic available. I mean, what are you going to do? Well, there's not much.
No, not this.
Go farm.
Soccer Nike has been a thorn in the side, but thorns are actually picked up by Fine. Okay, I thought you might be bringing that one up, so I got ahead of it for you.
Appreciate it.
No Ankh pickup for Mike, though. It's an upgraded Sunder for him. Not quite yet for Genetics, though he's still only level 11.
But Mike, it makes sense that he goes for Sunder because in so many of these fights, it's the front line of the Camelot Kings that is left inside of these engagements. He's looking for variety on the tail end of fights. Well, variety's pretty hard to kill, maybe a little bit easier when he's got way less defense, a lot more shred now available to the Jade Dragons.
306 for Fine OK in comparison to what Variety's been able to do. 1-3 and 1, a 3-level deficit in solo, 3-level deficit in support. We're talking about the dive not being effective for the Camelot Kings, and certainly that is true because of how far behind they are, but at the same time, the Dragons being able to create space with this front line and the lead that they've got also has been a factor.
Bro, where is Mike getting all this farm? Level 14 on the Ymir, only 1 level down on his own jungler, 1 level down on the enemy jungler. He's so tanky at this point and so mobile with a Relic Dagger that really he can just engage anytime.
Jump in from Sam, pushes Captain Twig back, and that's going to force Twig's ultimate. Hurwin's ultimate used as well as Panda Cat going to spread the damage out across the entire team. Genetics gets a good ultimate off as a dying wish. But I don't think anyone's going to be able to pop any of those stones as they just walk to Fire Giant, as you said, and start it up. But it's not free quite yet. Big Man and Netrioid still have their ultimates. No front line
50.
here to help them out. They've got to try and just make a play if they want to get in there, and Mike does not seem interested in letting this happen. Yeah, I'm just going to simply walk at you, and then I'm going to simply wall you off, and then you will simply die to my jungler. 3rd kill for Sam for Soccer. and PBM is just moving, dude. No one's stopping him.
Bro, that was the most sup loser play I've ever seen. Oh, you think you're stealing this, Fire Giant? Yeah, tough luck, buddy. Jump over a wall, I dare you. PBM is breakdancing inside of this one. Variety, Netroid Genetics, well, your work's cut out for you. Best of luck. Nice wall.
For a moment, and then it goes down, and the Phoenix now in trouble, down below half HP, and the Dragons haven't even stopped their breath quite yet. They've still been pushing. They've got a ton of gold in hand, I imagine, after how many fights they've won back-to-back, and Variety's going to blink forward. He's going to try and just give a last-ditch effort. They ult a fat ult, and no one is there to help him out. Genetics now walled off and
dead. Yeah, okay.
By Panda Cat, 7-1-7. For the ADC for the Jade Dragons, as they are cruising right now in Game 2.
Man, Camelot Kings got to be thinking themselves, thank God for these towers. They would have gone for the Phoenix right here, but fortunately for the Order side, they've maintained their tier 1s up until this point. I don't think they're going to last too much longer as the Jade Dragons just continue barreling down the map. And what's Captain Twig doing? Well, he's a little bit late to the party, but finally starting to get some farm. Invades the red buff, invades the purple buff, and I think it's the right decision to make. There's no world where this Gilgamesh is changing anything on these tier 2 towers.
Mike is walking through this map like he's a max level character in an MMO, where the newbies
He's
spawn.
smurfing!
Yeah, he's literally just smurfing through he's just walking through, kill
Dude,
that
Twig
guy,
your oom!
kill that guy, Captain Twig, kill this guy, where's Twig gonna go? I mean, he's got Blink, and he'll
nice.
use it, and now Panda Cat will ult to make sure that he doesn't just die to the tower, slow him down as well. Twig, nowhere to go. This will be 21, of course, for the Jade Dragons.
We all have to chase this?
Yeah, well, what else are they going to do? They want to
go push a tower?
Well, they got him back. They still haven't backed this
Oh,
whole
you're
time.
right. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
They got money to spend. Panda Cat has
4K.
3,500 gold in hand. They were going that way anyways.
Here's the thing about how Panda Cat's 8-1-7. That's the end of the
Tell me
statement.
about it.
I mean, I can't
Okay.
I can't analyze that. He's big. This guy's looking huge right now. I mean, Panda Cat can do no wrong, and I think you can say that about just about anyone on the side of the Jade Dragons right now. 8,000 gold deficit between these two teams, and Camelot Kings don't have that many towers left to burn through. I mean, they've already gotten all the permanent objectives just 2 tier 2 towers standing for the Jade Dragon, so not a lot of places for him to find gold.
Mifflin, you've been playing Smite for a long time. A really long time. How many times do you lose games
Not
where
often.
your backline, where your backline is a combined 14, 2, and 19?
Well, 95% of the time I win those. Let's put it that way. You know what? That's
crazy that you lose 5% of those, honestly.
Yeah, well, I get real unlucky. I mainly hit go live before I start my Smite games. That might be a contributing factor.
Yeah, that could end up contributing to that for sure. As the Jade Dragons really just taking their sweet time, playing with the food a little bit now, just making sure that there are no towers left standing. I mean, they're not killing the Titan quite yet.
Yeah, the Titan's still alive.
As far as I'm concerned, they're acting with mercy at this point, because they could just walk in there at this point.
Mercy kill them, guys. Come on.
We'll see if they do so now. 23 seconds left on this Fire Giant. Heroin might be gifting a little bit over. He's going to use both relics in response to being all the way in the front.
One more?
Netroid's got it. He doesn't, but that should be the end of the siege here for the Dragons.
Is it? I mean, Pythags, Typhon's Fang, and he actually did go for the Divine Ruin. Let's go see him hit Dragonflight on a back camp and go back to full HP. Morgan Le Fay has so much lifesteal, but you're right. The Jade Dragons might be playing with their food a little bit. Fire Giant buff wearing off, so might as well go ahead and re-establish the defensive positioning on the objective. And you think the Camelot Kings step up? I don't. Maybe they send Netroid over and say, yo, dude, snipe it.
I think you have to, right? I mean, maybe you feel like your Titan defense is good enough, but I really don't. I mean, they don't have great secure on the Dragons, right?
They don't.
So maybe you can get in there. They're going to be a little bit extra focused. Snipes, sure. But then you're just going to get walled, and then you're just going to get killed. And we've already gone through
yeah,
that
we saw what happened to BMT last time he tried to steal a Fire Giant. But look, their defense is decent. BMT's ticked over to level 20. Captain Twig finally over to 22. We're approaching 6 slotted across the board for the Kings. So this is as strong as their defense gets. I think their best case scenario is defending inside of these Phoenixes. I do not love their ability to defend the Fire Giant for the exact reason you brought up. PBM's going to wall him.
PBM's just going to wall you, bro.
You don't want to step into the jungle fight. Instead, taking an open field, and the closest thing to an open field inside of Smite is inside of your Phoenix.
That makes sense to me, but the Kings are here. It doesn't mean they're going to put up a staunch defense on this Fire Giant, as it is pretty far from being enhanced. 26 minutes is about to tick on. This Variety's still working towards level 20 at this point. Fire Giant is the focus, of course, and it is a Mannequin's Hidden Blade upgrade for Sam, so watch his chunk on that rend damage, even on the front line. Got a quick pause coming through. Appreciate the patience, as we should be able to get back into the action soon enough. The Jade Dragons really look like the Jade Dragons we've expected in Phase 2. They just have been
they took the scenic route.
Yeah, they took the scenic route.
They wanted to give everyone else a chance. So Bolts fans at home, you're welcome. Now the Bolts can sit at the top. Just kidding, obviously. They've earned everything they've done here. And now Jade Dragons prime for the Fire Giant. They're grouped up as 5, and it seems like, based on the positioning that we've seen from the Camelot Kings already, they're like you. They want to defend on this Fire Giant. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, you've convinced me. The Ymir walls are enough to make me think maybe we should back it up. But without the Ankh there on the other side, no Cursed Ankh pickup at all for the Jade Dragons. It really only takes one big ultimate from Genetics to potentially turn the game.
I mean, we've seen big ultimates from Genetics. We've seen 5-man ultimates from Genetics,
Okay.
9-man ultimates from Genetics. It hasn't quite panned out for them just yet, but when that did happen, to be fair, Genetics was doing it as a swan song. He did it just as he died. Maybe once there's a concentrated effort from the Camelot Kings to engage on their own terms, that's where they're going to find their footing, and seems like they're willing to do it on the fire.
I mean, Raijin has reached the Sacrificial Shroud point. All of a sudden,
That's
you've
big.
got extra percent damage on on all of your abilities. Raijin already doing quite a bit at this point. Maybe not quite over, but the Kings, I mean, you're really looking for things to go right from this point, because PBM is the only member not at level 20 right now for the Dragons, and he was level 18, so he had 5 levels up over Genetics. That's kind of the problem, is that Genetics doesn't have enough points in the ultimate for it to really work that well anymore.
Not enough points in the ultimate, not enough defense in the build. He's struggling to find these engagements so far, but that isn't going to continue to be the case. So you only hit level 20 once, and well, you only hit level 14 once as well, and he is sitting there at level 14 right now. 0-6-3 for the Terra. So let's see how the Jade Dragons approach this one. Seems like they want the fight, and this is what we were worried about. Big wall.
But this time Genetics slips through. A little bit of poke damage on a Panda Cat and PBM.
Did he slip through?
He did slip through. Indeed he did.
It looks hurt to me.
Well, that was after the fact. Captain Twig has to jump over the wall. But this is the strategy for the Dragons. Wait for Mike to find a wall, rinse, repeat. Now they're going to pull the Fire Giant.
Magi's burned off a fine okay, so he's going to have to play a little bit more intelligently around the engage. And we got to look at Netroid's damage. It's good, but Netroid being left alone like this is concerning to me. The
Blink in from Sam. He's found Genetics, and Genetics is already gone. But Captain Twig's going to jump in now as Panda Cat is low, and Netroid will get him, but Twig has been erased from the map. Fine okay, 2v1 on the back line. Thorns doing some good work, forces the Aegis, as Variety trying to do the same to the Dragon's backline, and he's going to be able to escape momentarily. Blink, freeze, beads are good, but I don't think they're going to be quite good enough for Variety. He is dead to rights. PBM notches number 24 for the Jade Dragons, as they've lost Panda Cat, which does significantly hamper their Siege and Fire Giant potential. The Kings might have gotten the highest value target on the map.
That was just the Camelot Kings playing that fight desync. They were on separate sides of the map. The front line, Variety, Captain Twig, and Genetics take one engagement, and Big Man Tings and Netroid, the sole sources of your damage, get isolated by Fine OK alone. Sure, was able to at least force Fine OK back, but that's all that they do. You want them to win that fight if it is going to be a true 2v1, and well, Fine OK plays it safe, plays it from a range, and burns off every single one of the defensive relics from Netroid. Sure, the Camelot Kings find a priority target, but at a very great cost.
28 minutes now as we get closer and closer to this enhanced Fire Giant.
Maybe they just wait for it.
At this point, they might. Look at where Genetics and Big Man Tings are going. They're going to go to the red buff. I don't think the Dragons know quite yet. They do have a ward near there, I believe, actually. Maybe that was a ward on the other side. It was. But it looks like the contest is now gone from the Camelot Kings. Relics end up being too big of a factor, as they will not poke their head in this time. Instead, they'll give it up, trade the tier 2 on the left-hand side, and allow the Jade Dragons to secure their second Fire Giant of the game.
I love this play from the Camelot Kings. They know they can't contest the Fire Giant, so instead, strip the jungle, back up, get the Draugr, which is going to help you out on your own defense, and pick up the Primal Fury as well. Whoa. I don't love this play, though.
Panda Cat.
Oh, okay.
Okay. He just
okay.
killed him. And Mike was on the way, but Panda Cat pulled the trigger way too early. He was relicless, and that will make the difference. Twig will get soloed by Mike from that position. Of course, he was about half HP. So a 1-for-1, but it's Panda Cat who dies with Fire Giant. That's a huge play for the Kings.
And it's their Hunter, so the siege just got a lot worse. Twig, I'm sorry I said anything. I thought you just lost that fight just based on the pace of this game. And no, you're right. He should have, considering how many people from the Dragons are on that side of the map. And it is a late-game Hunter, but Panda Cat uses that Centaurus a little bit early for my liking. Is forced to use it as he was falling into that threshold, but had to use Giddy Up to escape just to create a little bit of time for Mike to get there. That fight would have gone very differently.
Yeah.
Very good selection from Captain Twig to eliminate, again, Panda Cat inside the team fight.
Well, I mean, he kind of delivered it to him, to be honest. It just walked right in, 1v1, and for as squishy as Twig has been in this game, we've highlighted in the team fights how fast he's dying. You see the payoff for it there. He nearly one-tapped Panda Cat before PBM could be close enough to help.
And with Panda Cat having no lifesteal, it looked to me like he was fighting inside that Hero's Leap from the Gilgamesh. Yeah, that gives Gilgamesh some lifesteal. He's able to stick around in that fight a little bit longer. That's one of the downsides of this build from Panda Cat. It's just that cowl affording him a little bit of sustain. It's not that Aussie. It's not Devo's glove like it was in Season 7. Has to be a little bit choosier with his fights.
Panda Cat has respawned now, but of course without the Fire Giant buff, he's making his way downtown. Walking fast. Faces past. Faces past. Pace is fast, Ryan. Come on.
It's okay, buddy. I wouldn't have called
Vanessa
you on
Carlton would never say something so stupid as that. Ridiculous. Draugr buff is active here for the Camelot King, so this Phoenix a little bit harder to take down, and that matters when Panda Cat doesn't have Fire Giant, but Genetics isn't feeling any better for it. Sundered already. Tycho Drums is up, and this will not do enough for the Camelot Kings. A big ultimate already down on their side. Genetics has Blink. Might be looking for it, but it's fine. Okay, in first. He finds 3 with the knockup, but he's getting eaten alive by Netrioid, and he'll get the kill. But he will not get up into the sky. Knocked down by Panda Cat. Sam goes down to Captain Twig, and it seems like things have stabilized for a moment here for the Camelot Kings. 2 for 2, but they're on the defense, so they can get back and heal up on the fountain. The left side Phoenix will fall, but now Panda Cat is caught. Has to use the Aegis. Good freeze from PBM, and Genetics won't find the stun. Variety still trying to go forward, but there's a lot of damage waiting for him on the other side. The Kings not deterred, jumps over that Ymir wall, and Mike is the one who's left alone. He is dead to rights, you'd think, but a huge Pridwin shield will prevent it. I thought Mike had no shot at getting out, but it turns out being a level 20 Guardian matters quite a bit. That is a beefy Frost Giant.
Yeah, Winged Blade does a lot of work for him here. The Ghastly Breath only serves to make Mike faster and stronger. Walks out of that one easily when the drop kick sends him away. I thought he was dead as well. He isolates himself by walking to the jungle instead of sticking with his backliners, Panda Cat and Hurrywin, but clearly the man has run the numbers. There's nothing that could have happened to him there, and we are the idiots for thinking that he could have died at all. Captain Twig, again, doing what he's been doing the last couple of times, given any opportunity. Strips what he can on the map. Camelot Kings pick up the Pyromancer, but Jade Dragons maintain Fire Giant on 2 members. Peels off in about 10 seconds here, so this game is going to go ahead and stabilize yet again. But the one differentiating factor so far is this left side Phoenix. Camelot Kings going to be contending with these Fireman waves, and it's the hardest wave to deal with on Fire Giant Siege.
It is, but that was also the best fight we've seen from the Kings so far in this game.
Agreed.
The closest fight.
And that's with BMT not having his ult.
And that's with BMT really wasting that Tycho Drums for the most part. So that is a big deal if you're the Kings, gaining a little bit of confidence in that moment. And the fact that you watched Finocade just get absolutely shredded instantly on his blink in, it was a Sunder from Genetics right on time, and Netrioid just beads that held left click, and my man died. It was really that simple.
I mean, that's what Rom does, man, especially with this full bow build. Gets the attack speed stem, a ton of power afforded to him, and he is going to shred whoever steps up in front of him, be it Finocade, be it PBM, be it even Hurrywin, but maybe he won't have that opportunity. Hurrywin been playing very safe inside of this one. 7, 1, and 15 for the Jade Dragons mid laner. Maybe I got a bone to pick with Reddit. I don't think this guy's the problem.
I don't think so either. But, you know, that's how it goes sometimes. Panda Cat, hello. Opens the fight with Centaurus, and he hits Netrioid down below half HP, and Genetics has nowhere to go. Hurwin's going to get that kill. Now Variety has been knocked up by Sam for Soccer. He won't be able to do anything else. But Genetics is out of the fight, and Netrioid's got to limp back to base. Panda Cat just said, hey, we're fighting now, guys. Get in here, and the Jade Dragons got in there.
Just a great slow from that Centaurus ultimate. Genetics tries his best to peel out for Netroid, and you know what? Does exactly what I want to see from my supports, man. You better be dying for Netroid 33 minutes into this game, and well, Genetics at level 17 at least has the fallback of knowing he's got the lowest cooldown on his respawn on his side of the map, so Camelot Kings can at least rely on him to help out on the defense in about 15 seconds.
Captain Twig goes over and solos out that Oni Fury. That will be pretty helpful in staving off these fire minions on the left-hand side. It's fine, okay, into the Nook he goes. Jumped in, and that's going to cost him his ultimate as he opens the door for Sam momentarily. Remember, it does take some time to open when those sides Phoenixes are down, or up rather, but now that it's down, it opens right away for Fine OK as the right side Phoenix melted quickly. Turns out having your ADC alive with a Fire Giant buff helps on your Siege.
Especially when it's enhanced, but the Camelot Kings are taking a fight deep in the map. They're not playing inside their own Phoenix, they want to fight here.
Genetics is looking for Fine OK, but it's PBM in the front line. And Twig, where did he go? He didn't even get a chance to use the ultimate. Variety picks up a couple and gets a set of beads, but it's a wall again from PBM. Jump is good, but what an ultimate coming from big man Ting. Sam for Soccer got knocked down, still with his ultimate available as well. Junglers forgot their 4-key tonight, I guess, as a good root coming from Genetics. Gets both backliners, and all of a sudden, it's looking like a good fight for the Camelot Kings. Are you kidding me?
Netroid!
A deicide and a quadra kill for Netroid, and that might be game, Mifflin. I think it is. The Camelot Kings waltz out of their base, and they take the fight, and they win it.
Captain Twig just dies and is like, all right, guys, GG, sorry I lost us the set. Not the case. Netroid comes up big for the Camelot Kings and are now able to start to work their way into the base of the Jade Dragons. And nearest respawn, 20 seconds. GG. Maybe if you're lucky, the Winions are feeling good today, but I don't think they're going to win that base race.
You know what? After that left side Phoenix defense, I was thinking it only takes one fight from here. The respawns are long enough that the Camelot Kings lost every single fight in that game. Every single one they lost, except for the last one. And then they end off of it. And I just had a feeling with the way that last fight on the left side Phoenix went, that Sam got one shot, that Fine got one shot, that the clock may have ticked over to the King side.
All Sam had to do was press 4, man. He died to Netroid snipes, okay? Use your 4-key. You got a secondary health bar. I've been spending the whole last 35 minutes talking about how he's more health bars than anyone else. Dude just didn't use it. I don't need it. I'll save it for the fight afterward. Well, you can save it for the next game because we're going to game 3.
Couple of cardinal sins there by the Dragons, not using ultimates. Backliners getting double rooted by a Terra in the middle of the lane. Can't be happening, and the Dragons get punished for it summarily. We're going to game 3, baby. Kings and Dragons right after this.
here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true. I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
What's up, SMITE fans, and welcome back to the SMITE Pro League powered by Alienware. And like Aggro just finished discussing on that video segment, Alienware being the title sponsor for the SMITE Pro League here in Season 8. And you too can have all the gear available for yourself that the pros play on, both in studios and at home, by heading on over to smitegame.com/Alienware and making sure to plug code SMITEAW to get yourself a nice little discount so you can try and game like the pros. It's all bringing it down here. Everybody's losing their minds. I mean, given the fact that we've been seeing some pretty intense sets between these two teams so far, I have to commend the Camelot Kings in this one, though, Gore. They really made sure to keep that mental resilience going strong.
Yeah.
When you're down 11,000 gold, everything's looking pretty grim here. It seems as though the Jade Dragons have this one wrapped up in the bag, and the next thing you know, Netroid.
Yep. It's honestly one of those moments where you could genuinely throw out, 28 minutes of play from the Kings and say, cool, that didn't matter. All it turns out is this fight. That's the one that is really the key and the crucial detail for them. I think early on, yeah, you get a good first blood. I think that was like one of the few moments. What, did they have like 6 kills for a majority of this game? I mean, they were able to pick up certain things, but the Dragons ran away with a majority of this game. And all it comes down to is sometimes a simple quadra kill, Taco. Come on, you just pick one up easily, right?
And that quadra kill, though, largely credited to the fact of great frontline setup.
Yes.
And I think that was the real difference maker here between the Kings and the Jade Dragons, having that Terra Earthen Fury.
We genuinely just jumped 20 minutes in highlights, by the way.
And that's pretty much, that should say enough here, Gore, because the Jade Dragons, when it came down to it, those base sieges just felt so difficult for them to actually feel comfortable completely tackling because they had a lot of respect, I think, for big man teams on that Ryzen. They had a lot of respect for Netroid and that ROM late game shred, but this really is just a prime example of just because it looks like you're winning doesn't mean that you can actually bring it home.
It's the longevity of the game, right? Because it kept just getting prolonged ever so slightly, the Dragons' window of a lead was slowly closing on them. Not so much that it was like, oh, they're not in the lead when they lose, but so much that hey, you were stomping these guys, but you can't anymore. It's not just an outright win every time you decide to engage each other, just by the fact that they have been able to catch up in levels, slowly but surely get some more items online. The longer the game goes, the more equalized things are going to be. And I know, like, I think over the last couple of weeks, like, I was looking at games that had lost, but by like a team with a large gold lead. And there were some massive ones, but that's how they happen, right? Is you get a huge lead early on, but then 36 minutes into the game, you lose the fight, and all of a sudden everything falls apart.
Well, when you get a 4-man Terra root by Genetics combined with a Cerberus, well, I believe it was at least a 2-man stun, possibly even 3 there, a little bit cluttered for the Dragons as they were looking for the disengage, but again, it was just that inability to fully collapse on the Phoenixes, on the objectives, and as much as it seems as though the Jade Dragons are going to walk away with this set, Gore, now they find themselves in a Game 3 position, and for the picks and bans, it's actually going to be the Kings taking first pick here. But for the Jade Dragons, Gore, what kind of mentality do you think is kind of breaking through the team right now? Because, again, when you have that big of a lead, but yet you still don't feel like you can completely control the outcome of the match, kind of says a lot.
I like to think that they lost that fight and they went, huh, I guess we're going to have to just do it back in Game 3, right? Like, ideally, that's the mental, where you just bounce back to it. But like you said, you're in such a lead, you're like, oh, we're winning this. Losing those tends to hit a little harder. Doesn't seem to affect Mike at all. He's lounging. He's absolutely relaxing here. But I do feel like it's definitely going to get to you. I wonder if they change things up a little bit, though, specifically in the jungle. The Nike worked out pretty well for them for a majority of the game, so theoretically, you don't have to change anything, but maybe they could move some pieces around for themselves and make it a much stronger attack.
I think for the Dragons, something that they should try and consider throughout this Game 3 composition maybe is if you're going to try and prioritize the early to mid game, then you've got to make sure that you're actually giving yourself options to actually seal the deal on things. And it just felt like that Nike sort of paled in comparison to the likes of the Cerberus, Terra. But again, it's tough, I think, for a Nike to kind of work through that space because it's just a really solid front line from the Camelot Kings. And I do like this switch up already for the Jade Dragons, taking the Fafnir here for Polar Bear Mike. I think that that's a great aggressive acquisition here. And when you combine it alongside that of the Morgan Le Fay, definitely a lot of setup just between those two characters alone.
You know, if it had been Morgan Le Fay and not the Morgan in the very first game today, we would have had a Morgan Le Fay in every single game so far. I guess the Morgan is close enough, at least in namesake, to be able to go. We'll be lenient about it either way. I think this is such an interesting draft from the Dragons to me, just because the fact that first off you get this Fafnir, it was taken away from you last time, and in the first game it was picked up by the Kings. This is the first time we get to see Mike piloting it. But this Fenrir is also a big one. Banned by the Kings the first time, banned by the Dragons the second time. Like, Fenrir is like the no-go zone. No one wants to let him through, and it's a great pickup for Twig. I mean, look, he just won a game at 3-8, but by no means was that necessarily his performance that wins them the game. I think this is a good chance for him to kind of showcase what he can do.
Fenrir, though, might have some struggles when trying to deal with Morgan Le Fay and Fafnir alone. A lot of disengage between those two characters, like we already touched on. And the Izanami snap lock in that third pick position. Really early pick up here for Pandacat. Not usually one to, I think, pretty much just establish, hey, I don't care what happened. Like, I know for a fact that this god can definitely run it. And he has been having a lot of success with the Izanami.
I mean, looked good in game number 1. Makes sense to kind of run it back. I am wondering what, I guess maybe the matchup versus Terra really is the one that's going to be most fruitful for them, because that's what he was alongside the Terra earlier. But with the Fenrir there, the Raijin, I mean, Izanami's safe, does decent damage. She's not, again, at the top of everyone's radar, at the top of everyone's list, but she's never really been bad. She's just always kind of right in the middle to me.
You have to remember her attack speed steroid on that Sickle Storm. I believe 75%
oh, no, Taco.
When it's fully maxed out. And it's strong, Gore, yes, but at the same time, Izanami's escape, by far one of the more telegraphed escapes out of the Hunters in the game, and it might be difficult for Pandacat to actually maneuver when dealing with the likes of a Terra Raijin and the Fenrir even, because all three of those gods on the Camelot Kings already having great ways to kind of reveal Izanami when she's looking for that immediate escape. So it's definitely been established here, at least for what it's worth, that the Jade Dragons are looking to be the primary initiators here. And again, game 2, they definitely had full control of that early to mid game. It's about transitioning that lead into the actual game end that I think they have a little bit more in their back pocket for with this kind of shred through objective.
It feels good for Panda if, like you said, they get to be aggressive, right? Like if they're running at the Kings, they're feeling way better than running away from the Kings. And honestly, the power, the way the builds are going right now, I'm really excited to see more Izanami. Granted, it's only been 3 times, I think 4 times total this year, and most of that was Cyclone Spin. Now we've got Panda Cat putting his name on that twist as well. And I think this is a draft that is going to be able to make it look good too.
Well, Jade Dragons do get Sam's Mercury. Have to remember, though, that Odin is still up for grabs here for the Camelot Kings if they want to try and look for an immediate kind of counter engagement for that Sonic Boom. Also, Odin, I think that cage would provide a lot of problems here for the Jade Dragons when they're looking for that immediate collapse in a team fight scenario, and just gives a great corralling for Terra, a lot of AoE presence that could be supplemented in here for the Camelot Kings. Granted, that's not, I'm gassing up the Odin, but it's not a guarantee by any means. Just, he's definitely been a little bit of a flavor of the week pick.
Yeah, I think he's one that is good to be able to lock them down, synergize as well, I think, with the Fenrir and the Onher in the ways that Odin can in that sense, but it'd also be a good aggressive pick to go up against them. Hey, shots called, you hit them all the way with the Onher as well. This feels, I think, similar to the first draft the Kings locked in, but just better in everything it was trying to do. Like, Kabrakan versus Odin just feels like it's going to be better. Onher comes back, but you get the Raijin over the Giannis, feels better. And, of course, you get that Fenrir there instead of the Achilles, something you like to see. And you know what? I was 100%. I thought nothing but great. Look, you look Fafnir, you see Morgan Le Fay, you see Izanami, you see Mercury. Those top 4 scream really good for the Dragons, Taco, and I'll just let you have it from there.
Zhang Kui in that 5th pick position. I have a
that's a thing.
I have a definite hunch that this isn't going to be for mid lane intentions. I actually think that this might be Fino
Yes, this feels like a Fino
rocking the Zhang Kui pick here, and have to remember Zhang Kui, while he can provide a lot of burst damage in that Recall Demons, and even off the card alone, I think dealing a decent chunk of damage, it's going to take some time to ramp this Zhang Kui up and get him to that relevant damage dealing phase. So I'm maybe anticipating some early game rotations here out of Fino K. I think that's probably going to be the only way that he can really utilize a lot of that Zhang Kui pressure early on, and maybe try to look for early force outs of that Odin cage so as to give Sam a little bit more space to work in.
And you have to think about it. Technically, Zhang Kui's on a win streak right now. I mean, he came through. He was massively losing everything that he possibly could have, every single game he showed up in. And while the streak is not large, it's one. He won a single game against a very disheveled Scarabs is the word I'm going to use for it. He won that game, and admittedly kind of barely so at that. I think this is going to be the maybe true test to see if Zhang Kui can actually hold his own, or the Dragons just curse themselves.
Well, one thing's for sure, Dragons certainly not looking to hold back any punches here, Gore. This is a do or die sort of composition, quite literally. If they don't find picks early on with their initial engagement, it's going to be tough for them, I think, to try and look for that recovery aspect, because again, what got the better end of them in game 2 was just that front line shining through at the very end there for the Camelot Kings, despite a really well played game by the Jade Dragons. I think they had excellent punishes, great rotations to further punish the Camelot Kings for all the investment they were trying to put onto Panda Cat, but Panda Cat knows Camelot Kings seem to really have his number, and he'll likely be on the lookouts for it.
And I'm wondering if that was part of what this is like, hey, we know they're not going to care about the Zhang Kui, or if they care about Zhang Kui, Panda Cat's absolutely happy because nobody's coming to his side of the neighborhood. But the thing I think is interesting, and I'm going to give Fino K, I think, more than the benefit of the doubt, because even though Zhang Kui hasn't necessarily himself been performing incredibly well, it was Fino K last year who was playing the Hades in the solo lane, and the only one who did it, and he won with it when he did. Granted, one of those was like a 3-8 game. We'll sweep that one under the rug and go to the 5-0 that looked really, really good and use that one as the reference. He is good at pulling in weird things to the solo lane and making them work, and Zhang Kui's not even that weird for solo. So it'll be fun to watch.
As far as direct matchups are concerned, though, Gore, I definitely feel as though the Kings might have the Jade Dragons just a little bit beat here. Fenrir Brutalized, great for following Mercury.
Yep.
Fenrir jump stuns as well, very problematic for Jean-Qui and the Izanami. And again, just that ultimate corral factor from the Odin. Camelot Kings, they're looking pretty nice for game number 3 here, but Jade Dragons, they're not going to make it easy by any means. Aggro, Mifflin, your guys' time to shine.
Thank you, Taco and Gore. That's right, we're going to game 3, and that's in spite of the fact that we've played, let's say for argument's sake, we've played an hour and 45 minutes of in-game time so far. It's way too long. I know it hasn't been that long.
Probably like 45 less minutes.
Okay, let's go with an hour. About an hour of in-game time. And the Jade Dragons have been winning for about 58 and a half of those minutes. But here we are.
I mean, let's hope they can keep that up, right? I mean, they could, but I've got concerns, Aggro, for this draft. And it's not just Mifflin hates Jean-Qui, he's going to do his thing. Miflin's concerned about the ability of this Jade Dragons draft to peel for Hurrywin on Morgan Le Fay. I mean, is it going to be Jean-Qui just creating space? And if that's the case, I think it's a binary scale. If this game goes in the late game at anywhere near even in a team fight, if Recall Demons doesn't leave 3 people on this grayscale from Camelot Kings, how do they win a team fight after that?
I agree with you, and that's why I think I'm going a different direction here for the Jade Dragons. I don't think they're going to try to peel at all. I'm looking at this composition as a composition that might just go in. Izanami, dash in. Morgan Le Fay, go in. Sam for Soccer going in on Captain Twig right now. Fear comes in at the perfect time, and Dragonflight is right there. Twig gets 2v1 on the right side. First blood for the Dragons.
Donde está Big Man Tings? He was clearing out those left side camps while Captain Twig was out there literally fighting for his life and almost takes the fight up against Sam for Soccer. But luckily for Sam for Soccer, the problem child of the Jade Dragons showed up. Hurrywin there to turn that engagement around, and first blood going the way of the Chaos team.
Good hammer and Sunder combo there from Mike. We're going to force Netroid out of it. That's about half of his HP down. And getting Sam a lead on this Mercury, never a good sign if you're on the opposite team. Sam has looked phenomenal on this pick. We'll see if Netroid can play around these lane ganks, because that's normally where Sam spends the vast majority of his time, coming down duo lane like a rocket.
Yeah, you could have just stopped when you said doesn't look good when Sam for Soccer Mercury end. I mean, generally teams don't like it when he's allowed to play that god. That's why it's banned out against the Jade Dragons so consistently, but off to a great start already with first blood going the way of Morgan Le Fay. Hurrywin gonna try and do what he's been doing the entirety of this set so far, which is dominate. I'm not going to mince words. He has been having a great set so far on the new god, and generally has not been having too much pressure come his way. But the Camelot Kings with this draft, well, I think they're going to bring some pressure his way. Odin, Fenrir, Terra, even on her, the ability to jump in with the Raiju for Big Man Tings. All these things spell doom for an immobile mage.
Really like the Odin pick against the Morgan Le Fay. I mean, we're talking about a lot of her survivability coming from the ability to knock you up. Odin has knock-up immunity in the kit. Lifesteal, Odin has Ring in order to stop that. So I love that pick here for the Kings. And picking it late instead of these early Odin picks, which always irks me, this late Odin pick really allowing the Jade Dragons to pick themselves into a corner where they somewhat have. I mean, Jean-Qui got picked after the Odin, but the Mercury, that's not a pick that really likes to see an Odin cage on the other side either.
And even the Fenrir just alone in a Morgan Le Fay is incredibly good. The Dragonflight won't work against Brutalize. One of her best escape tools is the movement speed, yet doesn't work against Brutalize. Can fear him off if she's got that mastery available to her, but the second that's down, gotta think Twig's just gonna go ahead and gun it for him.
It is worth noting that if you just wildfire the Fenrir while he's on you, that will insta-proc the extra damage because he's using a mobility ability.
Oh, wow.
And so you chunk pretty hard, but it's just a DPS race. And a lot of the time, Fenrir wins DPS races if he can full channel Brutalize. So definitely agree with you there. Maybe the Jean-Qui is all about the Odin, not because of the inability to get out of the cage or anything like that, but you know, Jean-Qui gets 2 auto attacks for things like Odin Cage. He gets to knock down the cage twice as fast as most other solo laners would.
I'm actually so mad at you because I was like literally, I was honing in. You're bringing up the Jean-Qui versus the Odin. I'll admit it's not a matchup I've got a lot of data on. And then you hit me with the meme answer.
Wait, you played Xbox and you don't know the Jean-Qui Odin matchup?
No, not at all. We didn't play Jean-Qui. I don't know if you remember, but Delta Marine 72 had one god and it was Soul.
Okay, you're right, Soul. But but you surely know the Odin Xing Chen matchup.
Oh,
very
yeah,
well.
and it was not good. Let me tell you that. He did not win those lanes.
The back of your hand, you know that worse than the Xing Chen plus X matchup, basically anything there. Shout out to Worst, of course.
As the Jade Dragons, despite getting the first blood, have not really tried to keep pressure up. No successful buff invades
for them quite yet in this game. Everyone kind of handshake agreement so far, and that's somewhat typical in these game threes. Feel like players kind of understand that they have no more wiggle room from here. A loss means you're done.
Yeah, no more goofing around, guys. Let's focus up. And I'd say that the Jade Dragons, in a pristine focus game, could pull pretty massive leads, right? We've seen it from them in the past. We saw it from them in the last match, but didn't do much in service of finding the win. Able to strip away 2 Phoenixes and immediately lose 1 team fight. Count them 1 team fight in an entire set, and lose a match off the tail end of it. So Jade Dragons likely irked a little bit. I was joking around behind the stage saying my mental would be shattered, I would have disbanded, but Jade Dragons certainly a team that have the mental fortitude to stick around inside of this one and bring a very interesting draft here in Game 3, which kind of speaks volumes to the respect that these players have for Zhong Kui. I mean, Game 3 situation, everything on the line. Final K says, lock me Zhong Kui solo, and, well, we'll see how it pans out.
The old Game 3 situation, don't want to fumble. My name's Weekend, I lock in Nemesis Jungle, you know? But it's Zhong Kui and Solo, and I couldn't think of how to rhyme it, so I just went with the old copy pasta. That's all there is to it. Sometimes you just gotta stick to the classics, you know? That's why there's a lot of radio stations that's just old songs.
Is that actually true? I mean, you've got a radio broadcasting like degree.
I do.
You're an authority on this.
I worked in radio. Yeah, there are a lot of old stations. Your parents didn't make you listen to like classic hits from the 80s coming up next on Wish 99.7.
No, I listened to a lot of Thai music growing up when my mom was DJing, and I listened to a lot of country music when my dad was DJing. But oldies stations, not exactly the case. We're going off the deep end here.
Listen, it's real high-res hours. It's after 6 o'clock. Those of you who have been around a long time, you know how it goes in these longer days. That's sometimes how it has to be. Sam was looking for a gank for Netrioid, but didn't find it. Greater Scorpion, Twig blinks in, jumps in, and is now looking for Sam for Soccer. He'll pick him up. That'll get the beads, and that seems to be all Twig wanted, but I don't think that's all Twig's going to get, because now it's a big
He got hit by the
He
wall!
got blocked off by Genetics' wall, but it doesn't matter because Twig still ends up falling. Now Genetics has no dashes. Bees expended from Big Man Tings, but he's at a sliver of HP. Portal opened underneath. That opens up and gobbles up the mid laner. 3 for 0 for the Jade Dragons, and all of a sudden it's a 3,000 gold lead.
And the Camelot Kings got him exactly where they want him, aggro. This is exactly what happened last time around, and they were able to turn it around in the 4th quarter. Camelot Kings are able to at least secure the red buff thanks to the efforts of Netroid, forced to use that Desert Fury, which means not available to contest this Gold Fury.
And there was a ward on that red, so Dragons might know if they were paying attention to the animation. Gold getting lower. Pillar ends up falling. Dragons get the Gold Fury very, very close. A good hammer from PBM ends up being well-timed. And that is the first objective of the game, is Captain Twig lurking. He might be looking for a play as we see this great ultimate, or block rather, from Genetics on that Sonic Boom.
Oh, it was a 3!
That is nasty. That is so nasty, but let's check this out. Sam for Soccer now toast in his jungle. Genetics ends up getting that kill, but it was the pressure coming from Captain Twig that made it happen.
That's a mental crusher as Big Man Tings jumps into the tower, and Twig around the backside might be able to chase this one out, but instead going to go ahead and reset it. PBM a little bit too tanky, does not want to stick himself inside of that engagement. Sam for Soccer off to a rough start, has his ultimate full stop, just armbarred in the middle of the jungle, and then falls inside the jungle as well. Camelot Kings keeping their heads on their shoulders despite this stifling lead incredibly early on.
2-0-2 once again for the Morgan Le Fay in the mid lane for the Jade Dragons. Heroin continues to make this pick look good. He might be fighting Captain Twig, who is awfully low. Tried to solo out that Greater Scorpion, not at the point where he can do so. Variety and Genetics will end up picking up the slack and finishing off what Twig starts. But with that, the Dragons all of a sudden now up about 2,500, at least getting that return kill on the back end. Puts things a little bit more in their favor. Sam goes in mid, almost blocked again, but this time not good enough as Tings is going to dash away. Good damage coming, and now they've got to change their focus to Genetics. PBM still marching through the Tier 1 tower as Made You Look is the finishing blow. And here comes Fine OK on the Zhong Kui, forces out the Ragnarok, and Variety nowhere to be seen. And that will be another kill for the Jade Dragons in the mid lane. That time, Sam for Soccer made it work.
He did. And look, it's not every time a Terra is going to be able to block your ultimate with anything, right? Those are very small player deployables. It's not like a Ymir wall. It's not even truly an on-her pillar. Those are thin margins Genetics was operating on, so I'm not going to hold it against him that he couldn't do it every time.
On ping.
On ping,
as well,
too.
yeah.
This guy's crazy,
my
bro.
man's in Europe in doing this stuff.
Across the pond?
Yeah, across the pond. You know how it is. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Of course, we'll be hoping to get right back in to the game. Sometimes that is how it be. As the Jade Dragons are in a good position. Well said, my friend. We are back, right back into it. Sam now 1-1-4, and he's starting to work towards that Rage. In fact, he might already have it. Rage doesn't get bought that often these days, and I always forget how cheap it is. You are buying this very early the vast majority of the time, and it doesn't give you great stats up front, but guaranteeing crits in the late game when you've got something like a Deathbringer matters a lot.
And not just a Deathbringer, sometimes we see the Wind Demon selection as well. I mean, the Mercury build that Sam for Soccer generally goes for caps out at around 90% crit chance. I mean, it's not RNG anymore when you're that high up. You're just unlucky if you're not finding the crits. And finding this Rage so early on means he's going to have plenty of opportunities to get stacks. Already involved in 5 of the 5 kills for Jade Dragons. Sam for Soccer in a very good spot.
And he's not looking for kills, he's looking for objectives. As Twig has fallen behind again in this game, down 2 levels. Sam getting low, already down to half HP. He's going to dash away. Ragnarok picks him up, but he's got the beads right away. Big Man's in a great position and nowhere for Sam to go. He's toast. Big Man gets the credit for the kill, and a good cage comes from Variety as well. Whirlwind has to use the beads, and his ultimate's already gone. Dragonflight not good enough to peel this time around as Variety finds another. It's a 2 for 0 in favor of the Camelot Kings. You want to talk about a costly objective. A Pyromancer for 2 and 2 sets of beads. Certainly not what the Jade Dragons were looking for.
I'm not sure that it's too bad of a situation, though. Now there's no neutral objectives left on the map. Gold and Pyro removed. Means that the Camelot Kings, despite winning the fight, aren't quite able to do anything with it. Instead, fall back to their own jungle and are thankful to get their own red buffs this time around. And we got a little bit of a look at what Jean-Qui is capable of doing inside the team fight, and it's a lot of damage, but maybe not the CC and backline disruption that Variety was able to provide.
A great cage from him, and no Phantom quite yet for the Dragons. We'll see if that's what Mike wants to pick up.
Don't need
12.
it. They got double auto attack from Jean-Qui.
Got double auto attack from Jean-Qui. He just needs to build attack speed.
Yeah, get a Toxic Blade.
And that frees up an option as Sam uses that Sonic Boom once again. Beads were not available for Big Man, but Sam a little bit wide on that shot. And that's the threat that Mercury puts on you, though, is that if your beads are down, and Sam will get another ultimate off the next 93 seconds. If he lands it, you die. You just can't get out of that CC chain in time to live, especially when you've got damage like Morgan Le Fay coming your way.
And this is a different play style for the Mercury than we've seen from Sam for Soccer in the past. I mean, they talked about on the desk, he likes setting up between the tier 1 and tier 2 of his own duo lane tower to put the pressure onto guys like Netriot, generally into gods like Chiron as well, but instead, it's been this emphasis on the mid 3v3. Sam for Soccer wants to fight in the center of the map because of a couple of reasons. It allows FineOK to find rotations in and get this early aggression on the Jean-Qui. You're making sure Hurrywin is able to farm up safely. I like it. It's a distinct shift from what we normally see, and it's working out so far for the Jade Dragons.
Variety has made his way over, and FineOK has as well, as Oni Fury is up and available. Oracle Vision in favor of the Camelot Kings, and 38 seconds on Big Man Tings' beads, much less than that on Sam for Soccer's ultimate. But this time he's heading towards Duo, looking for a potential one down the lane, but he doesn't have it charged. Even though Netriot and Genetics knew he was there, they walk in a pretty scary area, but end up not getting punished.
Man, we haven't really looked at the long lane too much because there hasn't been much action over there, but PandaCat quietly acquires himself a 2-level lead already
without
inside
Benevolence.
Of the long lane, and no Benevolence this time around.
Dark Portal used, but Hammer already off the mark from Mike, so Genetics has time to shake and bake a little bit here, but Captain Twig is just getting crushed by Sam. Blink cage means Sam's got nowhere to go. He is dead before the cage can fall, but here comes FineOK blinking in. The great Jean-Qui looking for the damage in the back line, but maybe a little bit too little magic in that act. Is Captain Twig going to pick him up and bring him back? Beads already down underneath the tier 2 he goes, and Netrioid's auto comes out right in time. He was about to get spit on by the Jean-Qui. It looks like he's spitting with the 2 animation. That's what I was going with there. As it's
that
2
looks like
for
spit
0.
to you.
A little bit, yeah. He winds up and wow!
That's how
right
you
there
spit.
at it. Mifflin, there's action going on. It's a stun onto Variety, another stun after the fear coming from Hurrowwind. but the frontline Odin a little bit too strong. 1-0-3 for Variety, and so far, for my money, he's been the difference maker.
He really has, man. This Odin, this late Odin selection in the B's and B's is paying itself off in dividends already. Sanford Soccer hating his life every time Variety shows up. Fine, okay. Largely getting separated inside of these engagements by the cage as well. And it's not just them that are going to be in trouble. Hurrywin, Immobile, the second he's inside a cage, well, he's stuck inside the cage. I was poking a little bit of fun. I legitimately didn't think the Jade Dragons would go for the Phantom, but now I'm starting to think they kind of have to. These cages have been the difference maker.
It's a real big difference from when you first picked the Odin to when you last picked the Odin is what I'm really seeing. Is the Jade Dragons just can't find ways to get out of these cages quite yet. But Mike only level 11. It's possible that he will go for a Phantom. It won't be Sam picking it up. He picks up Aegis at level 12 or level 13, I suppose, when he finally goes back to base. And as expected, even though Sam has been one of the primary targets being caged so far.
And it's been a much slower pace since Sanford Soccer has finished up this rage. Been no stacks so far, so his crit chances remaining at that baseline. The passive is going to take a little bit of while to get its work to come through. Sanford Soccer deep in the lane, see if maybe he can line this one up. But Netroid has already spotted him out and is going to go ahead and hide behind the wall. Jade Dragons, though, are at least able to set up all this pressure on the neutral objective given any opportunity with Fafnir's Coerce, with essentially what is a double Hunter build with Panda Cat and double attacking Jean-Qui. Just kidding, I'm talking about the Mercury and his ability to shred objectives that just give him 10 seconds and this Oni Fury will be removed.
Especially with Mike right there with him, even without a Frenzy, which is an option for him now that he's at 12. It's probably a decision between that and the Phantom we've been discussing. It's fine, okay. Doesn't have a lot of damage in the build quite yet. He's working towards it next, but doesn't have it completed. It's Winged Blade third for him to contend with some of these slows. Watch out for Big Man Tinks in this fight. Level 15. He's 2 levels up on Hurrywin, despite the great start for Hurry, where he started 2-0-2. Genetics down to about 60% HP. There's the Hammer and Sunder onto Big Man Tinks. The big cage, but no follow-up quite yet. This time, Sam is not locked in. It is only fine, okay. And the fact that the Kings just lost a blink cage is a big deal, and the Dragons are not pushing it. Okay, now they are.
We got it, boys. Get out. We got it. They're done.
They won't do it now. Now back to the Oni Fury we go. It is already below half. Blink in from Genetics and Twig at the exact same time as Hurrywin is the focus. They pick him up. He gets put down because the beams and his ultimate is doing pretty good work. On that front line, Tycho Drums not getting enough for Big Man Tinks. This time around, and a Sonic Boom right on top of Netroid, but Net turned it around with that Desert Fury, and now Sam is limping back as Genetics might be able to find him. No blink for the Terra means that Sam will escape, as will Variety. A close fight, razor's edge to say the least, but it doesn't end up resulting in blood on either side.
Man, Netroid is playing so incredibly well inside of
this
set. I mean, he tracked him perfectly. Sanford Soccer tried his best to hold on to the Aegis and is forced to use it to avoid that very last tick. That threat has removed every single one of this Mercury's defensive relics, and still no stacks on this Rage either.
Yep.
A very slow start to this game for the Mercury.
I mean, he got off to a pretty good start, was 1-4. Finished the Rage thinking, all right, I've been a part of all these kills. It's going well. Surely I'm going to end up with a lot of stacks on the Rage.
No.
And here we are a little bit later. Another pause real quick, but not exactly the start for Sanford Soccer after he's finished off that Rage. Feel like the momentum a little bit more even in this one. The Dragons have really controlled the vast majority of these early games in this set. Kings fighting back better this time.
They just need to find, and I'm talking about the Dragons, they need to find an answer to Variety on this Odin. I mean, even in that last engagement, Variety goes in, gets nothing off the cage, and Jade Dragons give the Camelot Kings, 10 seconds to recompose themselves, and from there, pull the Gold Fury. Variety goes back in and makes it out with 10% HP over the red buff wall and is not chased whatsoever. That could have been an opportunity for the Jade Dragons to fold back into their own backline and try and chase out Variety, find that pick. Instead, they commit themselves to the engagement. Sanford Soccer goes deep on a Netroid and regrets it.
Sam ends up leashing the Pyromancer, and Variety steals it away. Don't think that spear will reach, and no blink for Variety, but Harry just walks in, says, thanks for the leash on this Pyro, I'll be taking that, and does exactly that. Another objective goes the way of the Kings.
And you know what? Final K and this Jean-Qui is doing a ton of damage, top of the charts right now at 8,700, but he's just not bringing that same level of pressure that Variety is. I think the Jade Dragons would have done well to have something to disrupt this backline.
Has not worked quite yet, but Fine still working towards that damage. Uh-oh, big cage is right, and the Hurwin is locked in. Good Aegis, though, and he's still standing for the moment. Twig actually has to go to a different direction because Panda Cat is shredding him, but speaking of getting shredded, Fine OK is in tatters on the front line. It's Variety who ended up getting the last hit. Sam's ultimate did not find a home this time around, and it's a 1-for-0 for the Camelot Kings. Neither character who got caged got killed, but it was Fine OK going in all alone. They got shredded by the Kings.
Fine OK died for the sins of Hurrywin, and Sanford Soccer says, look, you might have caged him, but you're not getting through me. And well, they didn't. They just took him down to the grave first. And Variety's doing what he's been doing all game, man. He's just standing wherever he wants. This time around, though, Panda Cat lets him know it's not that easy.
Panda Cat's starting to hurt, and that is the difference here for the Dragons. The dive has been onto Hurwin. Panda wasn't in a position earlier to punish. He might be now. Variety has Blink, and Cage is nearly up. It's up and immediately onto Hurwin, and Hurwin's all alone this time around. He's going to fall to the damage from Big Man Tings, and Sam for Soccer is between 3 different walls that were put up, 2 by the Terra, 1 by the On-Her. He can't turn to help. Hurwin, the victim of another Blink Odin cage. Variety making it happen on this Odin.
And here's the thing, Variety, you can just keep doing it. Jade Dragons decided to pick up Frenzy instead of the Phantom, so every time Hurwin's inside a cage, you better hope that those double auto attacks from Fine OK are nearby, because if that's not the case, we've seen what the damage output looks like. Big Man Tings going to shut him down immediately for his efforts, but despite all that, despite such a great sequence for the Camelot Kings, Oni Fury still up and available. Maybe an active decision from the Order side team saying, look, we've been winning these team fights pretty cleanly. Variety, you're doing a great job. If we leave this objective up, it's going to force the Jade Dragons to respond. Despite being 2,000 gold down, I think the Camelot Kings have all the momentum here.
Agreed. All the momentum on their side, and they're feeling it as well. They head to the Oni Fury. When was the last time the Kings lost a skirmish? It's been a minute, 20 minutes in the game clock as Oni Fury down, falls now below 25%. Hammer isn't there to secure, and the Kings will secure the Oni Fury. Variety looking to contest with Panda Cat, but Panda ends up dashing away, so the Dragons may be feeling the same pressure that the Kings are feeling on the momentum side, as they don't even really show up in force in order to defend that Fury.
And the Camelot Kings have a great response to this Zhong Kui. It's not just Variety. Very soon, it's going to be genetics that becomes the problem. That Recall Demons, the ultimate from Zhong Kui, yeah, that just procs Earth and Fury, by the way. I mean, he's just going to be healing his entire team. And with the build that Final K is elected for, he's not generating enough threat on his own to make up for that heal proc of the Earth and Fury. He is just there to dissuade the Camelot Kings. He's going to be a decent bit of CC with the third ability and a decent bit of consistent damage, but he's not bringing as much disruption at all.
I mean, Fine is just caught in a lose-lose situation. He either builds enough damage to be able to eat through Earth and Fury and then gets one shot, or builds in this manner where he doesn't, you can kind of just walk away from him and he doesn't put enough threat onto you, but at least he lives a little bit longer. It's really just that pick in mid that is a problem, or in solo, I should say, as we tune in to the mid lane. Captain Twig forced the beads from Hurwind with use of that Ragnarok ultimate. So now, Hurry, no beads. You know where Variety's looking anyways. Look at this, the King starting up the Fire Giant, still down about 2,000 gold, and Final K's in great position right now. Has Blink and ultimate up and available. Sam's coming out of base, and it's Final K who's been caged. Double autoing his way out, and indeed he will. Big engage now. As Final K did not take enough damage, and the last tick of that Recall Demons will kill Captain Twig. Sunder on the genetics, as Polar Bear Mike is going to transform. Sam trying to decide if he can join this fight with that Sonic Boom, but it looks like it might be heading back towards this Fire Giant is the call for the Jade Dragons.
And they've got so much consistent damage output already in Dragon Stance. Coerce, gonna hit the entirety of the team.
Hurwin's taking some damage from the Fire Giant. FG below 40%. Final K has to beads as he contests with the damage from the back line, as now the Dragons are off the FG, and it's the Kings on it instead, but they don't have the damage quite yet. Genetics has fallen into great ultimate coming from Sam for Soccer, gets him into the back line, but now he needs assistance, and assistance he shall receive. Sam is gonna live, and it's a double kill for Panda Cat, making him 3-0 on the match. Big Man has so many low health members in front of him, and he'll thunder crash to confirm one, but he's gotta die, says Mifflin. I don't think he will. Too healthy on the Raijin.
He's healthy, but there's 3 members of the Dragons there. PBM if he lands the hammer, if Hurrywin connects to anything, but instead, Big Man Ting's given so much respect off of the Thunderclap into 4 members. That is a tough one, but big note, Sam for Soccer finally getting some stacks on those Rage. Gonna get a little bit more consistent damage out of them, but it's been tough rolling. That all goes wrong when the Camelot Kings decide that, you know, this Zhang Kui, you know, let's get on him. No, that's not how it works. He's too tanky. We were talking about it earlier. Yep. Doesn't have enough damage to put threat on the board, but the threat there is just standing nearby is enough to make a mistake for the Camelot Kings.
Spinning onto him, and Jade Dragon's right back towards the Fire Giant. Mike has the upgraded Frenzy ready to go as a Blink ultimate hits everyone for Genetics, but then he walls off Captain Twig, so that Ragnarok doesn't do a whole lot there for the King's jungler. Fire Giant reset, half HP. Sam and Final K just hit the back button and commit. They're gone. 3 members still here from the Jade Dragons, but no relics burnt there from the Dragons. 1 or 2 ultimates used between Heroine and Panda Cat. It's a reset on that FG, but you see that was without an upgraded, you know, the ulted Chorus from PBM. That was without the upgraded Frenzy, and they still put that Fire Giant to half HP in 5 seconds.
Yeah, so that is a ton of threat on board. Camelot Kings rightfully grouping up on this right-hand side of the map because given any opportunity, the Jade Dragons have shown a propensity for decimating neutral objectives. Now it's about who can find the defensive positioning, who's going to get the vision advantage, who is going to be able to force out the opposition first, and where's that pick going to originate. And you got to think it's going to be the man we've been talking about this entire time. It's all up to Variety on the side of the Camelot Kings. If he blinks in and finds a good cage, it's worth harping on. No Phantom selection from the Jade Dragons, and 3 immobile gods that are just stuck there. Zhang Kui, Mercury, and Morgan Le Fay, all phenomenal targets for Variety on this Odin. And it's been very easy to execute on here. Has the blink available, has the ult, the rest of his team's starting to hit full strength. All the defensive relics going to be up in just about 10 seconds for the Camelot Kings. This next team fight is going to be net neutral across the board, and gold disparity 25 minutes in, sitting at around 1,000. Not even worth noting. That's just a couple of wards in pocket.
In fact, I think the Kings are at a really big advantage right now because look at the mid lane differential. Big Man Tings has finished off his Sacrificial Shroud. Heroine just finished his Soul Reaver and is level 17, whereas Big Man's had 4 items completed for a while. That could be problematic. The mid laner for the Camelot Kings definitely has the ball in his court now, alongside Variety, as you highlighted. Dragons split off. Panda Cat and Sam for Soccer end up 2-manning this Primal Fury, and that can matter in percent increased damage to the Fire Giant. When we saw how quickly they can do it anyways, it's got to feel pretty good.
It does, but you got to close gap onto the Fire Giant in order to apply that. And who's got the defensive positioning right now? It's the Camelot Kings, but there's a smorgasbord of wards on the map. I think Jade Dragons might legitimately have vision on it.
Variety has to use the cage, but it's defensively. The back walls are already down as Final K into the back line gets Aegis from both backliners.
Wow.
A lot of damage on top of that. Huge play, and here comes Sam. Cleanup for the jungler, and a great stun from PBM onto Genetics. Final K low though, and Captain Twig will claim him. Captain Twig gets a double as he finds Sam for Soccer. It's 2 for 2, and Twig does end up getting taken out, but now it's PBM in an upgraded dragon form, and Izanami and a Morgan Le Fay still standing for the Jade Dragons.
And Genetics hasn't gone back to base just yet. This is a tier 2 tower that should go down pretty easily here for the Jade Dragons, who've got their minions starting to work their way in now as well. And that's all thanks to the phenomenal positioning from Final K, who just walks into the back line of the Camelot Kings, finds a couple of carries, and nobody even looked at him. I mean, nobody even tried to stop him from dealing his damage. They just hit that S key, start to walk back towards their own side of the base. Well, Recall Demons is pretty easy to channel when you're just walking down the opposition.
I mean, you're never going to get a better value ultimate from a Zhang Kui than that. How about this? Jade Dragons don't back. They head straight to fire, but
so
great
fast.
pickup by Doug. They are on ward vision. Big Man Tings nearly has his Taiko drums back up, but Fire's getting
Point
low.
toss.
Blink in from Genetics, and the Jade Dragons have gotten the Fire Giant. Genetics knocked up, and that might slow him down enough, but a great double root. Panda Cat has to use both relics in order to try and escape, but Big Man is hunting. You can feel that he wants to jump forward, and jump forward he will, directly into the hammer, but Panda Cat wasn't on the same page. Blink Cage from Variety gets Panda Cat once again, but he'll be able to dash out as Final K has rejoined the fray, and here comes Sam. Double kill already, and looking for more. Sonic Boom charged up. Netrioid has to use the ultimate. He loses that trade, but it's Twig who came over the top in order to help him, but Netrioid's still dead. Captain Twig now hammered and toast. That is 4 for 1, and the Jade Dragons might be marching on the Titan.
Camelot Kings thought maybe they had an opportunity to re-engage after that Fire Giant. Not the case. Jade Dragons were moving in with numbers, so Panda Cat left alone up against Variety. Well, your damage is down, bud. No more Bird Bomb. You don't win these.
Gotta hit the autos, though, from Panda Cat. Good jukes coming from Variety. One jump will do it, but he'll use it in order to escape. But Variety did great work, not just damaging Panda Cat, but buying time. Mike does have that Fafnir ultimate up and available. It's a matter of if they go for it. I don't think they can end anymore. They're going to get this mid-Phoenix, and that should be it for the Jade Dragons. Camelot Kings, as they've shown, all they need is the door to stay slightly open. And then there's still sunshine shining through right now.
Yeah, the Camelot Kings got them. I mean, I already made this joke, but exactly where they want them. Aggro, this is exactly the win condition that we saw last time around. Jade Dragons find themselves in the exact same position as well. 8,000 gold up, 29 minutes in. Fire Giant on 4 members and only 2 Tier 2 towers standing between the last remaining birds on the side of the Camelot Kings. And, well, it's a little bit tough to see how they're going to go ahead and start this siege. Likely going to start to work their way down that long lane, but with the map split as it is, split push becomes a little bit weaker. Maybe send Sanford Soccer to act as a solo agent and utilize that semi-global ultimate to rejoin the fight, but I'm not sure I love his odds in 1v1s up against Captain Twig, who's gone for a great build to deal with this damage output from Sanford Soccer. Sustain advantage goes the way of Fenrir. I think that really Sam can't operate on his own.
Yeah, I don't know if he wins that 1v1. I mean, Spectral Armor makes a big difference, but I don't know if Twig just deals enough damage.
Stone Cutting Sword, Seething Howl, I mean...
It's pretty close.
Serrated.
Yeah, serrated for both sides. That lifesteal, both of them having lifesteal makes it a little bit hard to do
has
math.
more.
One has more, and that's always going to be the Fenrir. Seething Howl, a good button, to say the least.
One of the best. I think that's the best stim in the game. You were talking about Izanami earlier. I think it might be Seething Howl.
I was thinking of attack speed stims, but you're right. I mean, Seething Howl is just the best stim in the game. No doubt about it. Between the runes you get, the lifesteal, the power, it's all there for the Fenrir. Interesting choice here by the Jade Dragons to not go to duo side, especially with Oni Fury coming up.
Agreed.
A little curious as to why they're going to this side of the map in order to try and make it happen. And as you highlighted, it's pretty hard to split push when they're this far apart.
And instead, it is going to be a true 5-on-5 engagement. Keep your eye on Fine OK. I think he's going to spell the engagement for the Jade Dragons. And all the Dragons have to do is survive this cage. If Variety doesn't get a ton of value off the initial, I mean, that's the Camelot Kings game plan gone immediately.
Big pillar stun from Netrioid and then a follow-up stun from Genetics. Just got the beads away from Fine OK. And now that dive becomes a little bit worse for the Zhonghui. So much so, that ends up being enough in order to back up the Jade Dragons. Remember, this Fire Giant is not enhanced. It's only the regular version. There's not that much time left on it. 20 seconds until that buff falls off. So this looks like an Oni Fury, reset and push with the Oni waves sort of situation. Maybe try and use that advantage to set up the Fire Giant.
I think they could at least try and take out that Tier 2 tower. I know the backdoor protections are still there as the Fire Giant is not enhanced, but Camelot Kings aren't showing a propensity to step up that far here. But Jade Dragons not overly concerned with it. Instead, reset to base, spend all the gold that they've acquired, hit some massive power spikes. Sanford Soccer actually purchasing an entire Bloodforge off that back, and
now he wins that.
Yeah, now he's going to win the 1v1. Full stop. It doesn't matter that you have Spectral Armor, Captain Twig. He hits harder, he crits, and he's got just as much lifesteal. So that does open the door, if the Jade Dragons do acquire the Fire Giant, for that split push potential for Sanford Soccer, which means I think the Camelot Kings essentially have to put up their defense on the Fire Giant.
Yeah, not a lot of options from here. So this is a very similar position to where we saw them last game, but really probably a better one overall, I'd say. They still managed to find that one. Genetics walking up. Could have been a trap set, but not walking up too far. As the Oni waves start pushing on that left-hand side, those should eventually get the Tier 2 in the left. Variety eats the hammer. Not a lot of damage, though, as everyone a little bit too far away. And that should do for the ward coverage that the Kings are going to be able to grab. 1 sentry left in inventory, and that's Big Man Tings. And it's hard for a mage to put that into a priority spot deep on the enemy side. The Dragons head on over towards the EFG. It has just spawned. They've got this poke damage between the Morgan Le Fay, Fafnir Hammer, little card from Fine OK. Those can make the difference. Check out the option for Fine OK. It's not Sacrificial Shroud, it's Blood-Soaked Shroud. It's a little bit different for him here.
A lot more protections afforded to him. Doesn't want to sacrifice any of his HP, knowing that he has to be that frontliner for his team. I think it makes perfect sense as Fire Giant pulled.
Mike taking some damage from it as well. Fine OK eating damage from Big Man Tings. and walking through the firewall as it spawns. A little bit of unlucky timing there for the solo laner for the Jade Dragons. And with that, the Camelot Kings have regained some footing in the jungle. That's so often the battle of these late game Fire Giant fights is how close can you get to FG. Well, the Jade Dragons, they know they might be close, but they don't care too much. Frenzy and Coerce pop. This is going to be quick on the Fire Giant. Genetics knows it. Blinks in right away, and fire is gone. The Jade Dragons have claimed it, and Genetics and Variety are a foregone conclusion in the enemy backline. Jump away from Variety. Too little, too late. 3 in a row now for Heroin. Twig's going in. He needs to find someone, and Sam is low. Big man up and over the top. Panda Cat's going to fall as well, but now it's just the front line left for the Jade Dragons. Big man's Aegis. Perfect hammer there from PBM right on time. And now it's just Captain Twig and a dream for the Camelot Kings. And Morgan LeFay is sick of the Dreamers. 5 in a row for Heroin, and that does it. Jade Dragons stumble in game number 2, but they pull out the 2-1 victory over the Camelot Kings.
They could just walk down the center of the map. Fine, okay, full HP. Heroin, full HP, and as is PBM. This is a leisurely stroll for the Jade Dragons, and it's all off the back of one team fight. Camelot Kings a little bit over-eager to get in towards that Fire Giant. Once Coerce is popped on 5 members, once Frenzy's popped on 5 members, and we saw what their burst looks like without it. Yeah, that Fire Giant never stood a chance.
Genetics is back up as it's starting to get low, and no one else is coming to help them. Variety up in a moment, but not enough. The Jade Dragons do end up finding the victory over the Camelot Kings in a thrilling game 3. That one by far the closest of the set.
That was a incredibly entertaining game, man. And you know what? I apologize to all the Zhang Kui lovers in the chat and in the SPL.
That's right.
For my money, that's his first win in the SPL, by the way. I'm not counting that one.
Well, I have to because the stats do. If Gore's stat sheet says it, then I've got to count it. That's how
Gore Miser ruins everything, dude. Not true. He's the best of us.
Not true. He's the best of us. We all know it. Jade Dragons find the 2-1 victory over the Kings in a long one. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back to break it down on the desk.
Welcome back, Smite fans, to the Smite Pro League powered by Alienware. And we just saw, I think, one of the most impressive game finishes that you could ever ask for between these Jade Dragons and the Camelot Kings. Before we get into all the action that just took place throughout this set, I want to go ahead and remind you guys back at home that for all your SPL needs and watching the SPL in the primary comfort of your home, want to head on over to shop.smiteproleague.com and go ahead and pick yourself up one of these Smite Pro League hoodies, Smite Pro League jerseys, and I'm sure there'll be more stuff in future lines to come, Gore. We did dabble a bit in the baseball jersey discussion, so wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see one of those in the store in future, line releases. But as for right now, shop.smiteproleague.com. That'll be the way to go. That'll be the way to go, Gore. But the way to go right now for Jade Dragons is currently just up as they lock in this set victory win over the Camelot Kings and put a little bit of a damper on that Camelot King spree that they've been hot on as of late.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful turnaround for the Dragons. Granted, I say turnaround, but it's just Game 2 got out of hand a little bit towards the very, very, very end of it for them. And so this is more of a stabilization, not just being able to maintain the set, but also kind of regulating themselves in the standings. The Dragons were right in that weird area where they were starting to fall behind, and this one, admittedly, Taco, it was kind of close for a little while there. I mean, the Dragons end up coming out on top with a couple of good fights, but the Kings kept it incredibly back and forth.
You can bring as many walls as your heart desires, Gore, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the burst damage to compete, Jade Dragons kind of just eating the Camelot Kings alive. The burst damage just so overwhelming, most particularly noting that of Sanford Soccer's performance and Hurrywin. I think that they both had great executions on the Mercury and the Morgan Le Fay, and their impact was definitely felt throughout these mid to late game team fights.
Yeah, I mean, you get to see Sam just put on an absolute clinic at a certain point throughout this game, and I'm going to say Morgan, as after yesterday, I was a little timid about where she was going to be. I was like, man, the one super competitive game we got with her, she didn't look too hot, so let's see how she's going to translate to it. And I think everyone today, I mean, even in the game that they lost, she was able to look really good there. What is that, 7-2 and 8 for her a win? So definitely something I expect to see tomorrow, maybe coming up in the next couple of weeks. But also just between Sam, the damage output they had, what Panda Cat was able to do, I mean, almost 28,000 damage on the Izanami, plus Zhang Hui, who just held W at them in those fights. I mean, fine, okay, sometimes it helped, sometimes it hurt, but for the most part, was able to get a lot done.
Panda Cat just silently chipping away at those cages, at the terror walls and the monoliths. It just didn't really leave a whole lot of room to operate there for the Camelot Kings, despite all that team utility they'd opted for. And we've got the man of the hour here himself, Hurrywin, the mid laner for the Jade Dragons. One heck of a Morgan Le Fay performance there for you, Hurry. And if you had to pick, Tiamat or Morgan?
Well, that's some private information, don't you think? Which OP mage is more OP is kind of the question you're asking me.
Hey!
They're both
I mean,
OP,
the reveals, the spoilers. Let's be honest, man. I don't know if there's really anything that you guys are really that scared of at this point, because that was a pretty spicy closing team composition that you guys opted for here. And looking at game number 3, after what happened in game number 2, what's the team mentals and communications like after that sort of performance?
Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of has to work together. Everyone's definitely pretty frustrated. It's just a frustrating way to lose the game for sure in general, especially when we work so hard to get in that position. So there definitely is some a little bit of heated conversations trying to figure out what we did wrong, and then a collective effort to bring us back down to earth and just prepare for the next game, be confident in what we were doing, know that we can do it again, just make fewer mistakes, and we'll be good to go.
Well, I'm certain that the team's probably feeling pretty good after solidifying yet another set win, trying to work your way up the standings. And do you feel as though you guys are really starting to find your flow here, or do you think that there are still some things that you definitely want to try and capitalize and basically just fix for future sets?
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, I don't really think our flow necessarily ever went away. I think we maybe had a little bit of hiccups with the new patch. We're kind of a team that tries a little bit more new stuff than other teams, especially among the top teams. So I just think over time we're only going to get better. Like I said, I don't really think we faltered as much as people maybe say. I think that'll probably be reflected more in the weeks to come, though.
Well, one thing's for sure, the team synergy definitely looking strong here to close things out up against the Camelot Kings. So congratulations to you guys for another set victory, and thank you so much, Arian, for joining us for the post-game interview.
Thank you very much.
Arwen, the team, Jade Dragons in general, feeling pretty good here. And I love the fact, Gord, that he mentioned Jade Dragons, a team that's not scared to experiment. And if that last composition isn't enough evidence of that, Gord, I don't really know what is.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they're willing to go out on a limb, like, oh man, do or die, game 3, last pick, fine, okay, what do you want? Grab me the Zhang Kui, man. He's like only 1 in 10 at this point in the league. It's perfectly fine. And still makes it look good. I mean, maybe not as good as you would have liked overall, but still, it gets the job done. It did a good amount of damage, and he was able to control a lot of those team fights. So I think it's opening that conversation to a wider god pool for the Dragons, which, admittedly, in Phase 2, that's a great spot to be in.
It was an incredibly deceiving draft, I would say, from the Jade Dragons there to wrap things up for game number 3. And like I just mentioned, Jade Dragons now moving up to that 5th place position. They're going to be 3-3 now in those standings out of the 6 sets that they have played so far. Olympus Bolts still leading the way, and Camelot Kings sitting pretty still at slot number 2. But of course, we've got plenty more games to come. For tomorrow's sets, we've actually got some really fun matchups. I think the Solar Scarabs versus the Valhalla Valkyries should be a relatively interesting set to see how all of those roster debacles are essentially going to pan out here for the Solar Scarabs. But Oni Warriors as well up against the Tartarus Titans. Can definitely expect that to maybe be neck and neck. Yeah, that's a fun one to close out the week on, because the Warriors are unpredictable in my mind. Sometimes I expect them to come in and just get rolled over, and they not only put up a fight, but they'll win the set. And same thing for the Titans, although the Titans have definitely been putting up a lot more. I think it was the end of Phase 1 they really got everything together, and they've been slowly pushing forward. But tomorrow will be their first set, technically, without a coach. I think it's fair to say that the Oni Warriors and Tartarus Titans definitely seem like teams that tend to play up to the level of competition that they're against, or at least that's how it's felt with a lot of their recent set performances. But like we already talked about, Gore, some really exciting Game 3 sets taking place here today. Bolts come out on top, so do the Jade Dragons. But of course, if you guys missed any of the action, definitely recommend checking out the VOD. These were some pretty spicy matchups all around for today. But like I said, we have some more coming to you guys tomorrow, but it'll have to wait until tomorrow. So thank you guys so much for joining us here today for Week 4, Day 2 of the SMITE Pro League powered by Alienware, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.